Good evening.
Hello.
Hello.
I could do that.
So there's a Frankie and Carolyn.
Yeah, I think that's Carol. That's Frankie on just on their own. I think Carolyn will log in separately.
Okay.
That's my thought process. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, I'm just gonna run and grab my water.
Okay.
Is that you? Okay. Oh. Well, I just did something.
Oh,
Oh. Oh. Okay. I will resend it. So Frankie, can you log back in? Okay. Okay, thanks. Okay.
hello, Tim.
Hey there. Just got in from walking the boys.
Hey, all right. Well, hopefully they're good for a few hours here.
I hope so. If not, they'll be up in my lap in no time at all.
Oh,
So I just resent to Carolyn. Oh, and Lorraine, are their email addresses active?
I'll be right back.
hey, hey, Tom.
There she is.
Yeah, for some reason I had 5:24 at 6 o'clock, not today. So I'm here.
Oh, you had the earlier one. You had the one that came out earlier today for the
Yeah, I couldn't find this one, so I'm good. I apologize.
No problem.
I'll get that.
Still need Khalil yet. Send Khalil a text.
He's saying he only has the one for the May 24th, so I'll tell him to go in through the attendee.
Yeah, he probably got the same thing I got.
Okay. I think I just. He's in the
Oh.
attendees list.
Oh, I see him.
Okay, great. There he comes. Good.
There he goes.
Okay, great.
Sorry
Right.
about being late.
That's okay. We had 2 emails about meetings and it was a little confusing. Thank you very much. All right, so it is 6:34 on Monday, May 17th, and we're here for the regular monthly meeting of the Mayor and City Council. Call the meeting to order. And if you'd all join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Anne Marie, we have the flag.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Give me 2 seconds.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go. Okay.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
of America,
America,
to the Republic,
to the republic, stands
Stands
one
one
nation,
nation under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
liberty,
liberty and justice.
justice for all.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right. So I want to thank everyone for coming out on this gorgeous evening and taking time out of your evening to be here with us for our first meeting of the new city council. And I notice we have 42 attendees on, which is a very large number for our regular meetings. So happy to have all of you here. And we do have a very busy schedule or a very long agenda here this evening. So we'll try to move through these things as quickly as possible. But I do have a few announcements before we get started. First of all, some of you were able to join us earlier this evening when Carolyn Jones and Khalil Saliba were sworn in as members of City Council. I welcome both of you. Thank you very much for your willingness to serve and congratulations on your election. Also would like to recognize that earlier today, the BPW held their regular monthly meeting. At that meeting, Tom Panetta, Earl Webb, and Richard Nichols were sworn in as members, 2 returning members in Tom Panetta and Earl Webb, and Richard Nichols as a new member of the BPW. We look forward to working with all of them and the sitting members of the BPW as we work through the various issues, including the dispute that we have been working on for some time. So I thank all of you for your willingness to serve and look forward to a productive council that we will work well together. And we're just 2 weeks away from Memorial Day, if it's hard to believe that it's here already. But I think we've already begun to see the summer traffic and the summer visitors. So I think we're going to have a very busy summer this year. And I want to thank everyone for your continued mass cooperation with the mask wearing. I know we're all suffering from mask fatigue. And later this evening, we will talk about how we're going to move forward on that. I would note that Anne Marie and I attended a joint meeting with the other members of mayors and city managers last week, where the governor recognized the 19958 zip code as being the most highly vaccinated zip code in the state, and that Sussex County is the most vaccinated of the 3 counties. He did go on to say that also 80 to 85% of those over 65 have been vaccinated. That's an incredible number and very high pickup. In addition to that, there's one other comment I would make, and that is that we're all working together on this, and we're all concerned about tourists. Whatever action we take tonight, should we choose to repeal the mask wearing or follow the state guidelines, anyone is welcome to wear a mask in a situation where they might feel uncomfortable. This is whatever action we take, we'll come back to that as we move through the evening. Also, earlier this afternoon, I had a phone call from DENREC regarding a report that came from Lewis regarding a suspected oil spill offshore. And Matt Higgins from DENREC did call me and tell me that he had been down and inspected it, and it is not an oil spill, that it is decaying vegetative matter that is washing up on the shore. It's leaving a black substance along the tide line, but it is not an oil-based substance. So if you see that on the shore, it is not oil, according to DENREC. And so they, I beg your pardon? Okay.
Surfer's phone.
All right. So that's it from as far as announcements I have. Do any of you at the table have any announcements you would like to make? Hearing none, I think we can move on to appointments for city council members and various commissions that we have organized throughout the city. And I think on the agenda, we have the following appointments, and I will do with this as a consent agenda unless someone would like to hold any one of them out. But the items are: the deputy mayor had been Bonnie Osler. I would ask that you approve Andrew Williams to become the deputy mayor. Secretary had been Rob Morgan. I would appoint Tim Ritzer. Assistant Secretary is Janine Heffley. I would obviously, Janine as a city clerk would remain in that position. The treasurer had been Andrew Williams. I would appoint Carolyn Jones. City Solicitor Glenn Mandelis. I would ask that you approve Glenn as continuing in his position. The Code Enforcement Officer had been Steve Barrows. Steve has moved on to become a building official, and we have hired a new gentleman by the name of Joe Pemberton to be the Code Enforcement Officer, and I would ask your approval of him. In terms of ex officio members to the Planning Commission, it had been Bonnie Osler and myself, and I would have asked that you approve Khalil Saliba and myself to that position. Ex officio to the Planning Commission would be Tom Panetta. Ex officio to the Historic Preservation Architectural Review Commission had been Bonnie Osler. I would ask that you approve Carolyn Jones. Ex officio to the Parks and Rec Commission had been Andrew Williams. I would ask that you approve Carolyn Jones. Ex officio to the Bike Pedestrian and Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee had been Tim Ritzert. I would leave that the same. Ex officio to the Traffic Safety Committee, Advisory Committee would be Andrew Williams and Tim Ritzert. I would leave that the same, with a note that there is a possibility that as Andrew and Tim can look at this, we may consider consolidating those two committees. Ex officio member to the African American Heritage Commission had been Rob Morgan. I would ask that you approve Carl Saliba. Ex officio to the Public Arts Commission had been Andrew Williams. I would ask that you approve the same. Ex officio member to the Greenways and Trails Commission had been Tim Ritzert. I would ask that you leave the same. Mitigation Planning Team ex officio had been myself and Rob Morgan. I would ask that I would be reappointed, and that Carl Salima would be the ex officio member. The Finance Committee had been Andrew Williams and Bonnie Osler. I would ask approval for Carolyn Jones and Andrew Williams. And we've had two committees listed here, the Downtown and the Beach Parking Committees. Those were ad hoc committees. I would not propose appointing anyone to those. They would be appointed on an as-need basis. Historic Byways Committee had been Tim Ritzert, and I would continue with Tim Ritzert. The Police Review Committee had been Bob Morgan and Bonnie Osler. I would ask that you approve Carolyn Jones, who had previously served on that committee as a civilian, and Tim Ritzert. And Sussex County, I would ask that you, liaisons, I would ask that you approve Carolyn Jones and Carl Saliba. The FOIA officer would be Janine Heffley, who has been that for, in the past, and City Solicitor Bill Lux would continue in the same position. So I would ask a motion to approve those appointments as read.
I make a motion that. we
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion
I'll
and a
second.
second. Okay, thank you, Andrew. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. And I appreciate everyone's willingness to step up and serve in these various positions. This is a long list of people, and it's a long list of commitments. And all of these committees meet separate from a regular city council meeting. So it is important that you recognize just how much time city council and the members of the civilian forces are putting into these positions to make sure that the city functions well and addresses the needs of the community. Moving on then is proclamation and recognitions and appointments. Item F1 is presentation and possible action on appointments to the Planning Commission to fill the completed terms of Kay Carnahan, Tom Panetta, and Melanie Moser. I would ask that you consider approval of Melanie Moser, the reappointment of Melanie Moser, the approval of Tom Jensen as a new member, and the approval of Deborah E. Walls as a new member. I would note that Kay Carnahan has asked to be stepped down, and she has moved on and is now working on our Parks and Rec Commission and working with the beach areas. And Tom Panetta is now the ex officio member to the BPW. Is there a motion to approve that?
Make a
So
motion
moved.
to approve it.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item F2 is presentation, possible action on appointments to the Historic Preservation Architectural Review Commission to fill the completed terms of Barbara Warnell and George Tomlinson. And I would ask that you consider reappointment of those two individuals. We have a motion.
Make a motion that we reappoint them.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Are all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item F3 is presentation and possible action on appointment of the Parks and Rec Commissioner for Parks and Recreation. And I would ask that you approve Judy Jeffers to that position. Judy has a history of working in the state at the state level at Bellevue Park, and I think she will bring an excellent skill sets to the Parks and Rec Commission. I would note that Barry has served well on this commission and in this particular position, and he is moving on to become the Parks and Rec Commissioner who will be responsible for the Great Marks Park, which is an area that a couple of months ago, when we expanded the Parks and Rec Commission to 11, we anticipated that we would appoint a commissioner to the beaches and one to Great Marsh Park. And this will fulfill that anticipated placement. Motion to approve Judy's appointment.
I make a motion to
So
approve
moved.
Judy's appointment.
Okay, any opposed? All in favor? I think we got it.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, then moving on to the consent agenda. In the consent agenda, we have the Mayor and City Council meeting minutes from June of 2020. We do not have the meeting minutes from our last meeting. We also do not have meeting minutes from the Board of Public Works. We do have the financial activity reports, the police department activity reports, and the fire department activity reports. Entertain a motion to approve those reports as received.
I'll approve. I just had a question. Was there a particular reason that the June was pulled out? It just was never entered into the record? Is that the issue?
It's just never been finalized.
Okay, fine. I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Mhm.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. And moving on to item I1 is presentation and possible action on an ordinance to amend Chapter 9 Environmental Protection Regulations of Chapter 197 zoning of the municipal code of the city of Lewis, Delaware by amending section 197-75 water resources protection areas, source water protection overlay. Obviously, we've had a public hearing and we've had a lot of input from the Planning Commission on this. However, given the fact that we have two new members of council, I do not feel that we are ready to act on this tonight. I think that we would best defer action on this so that this action could be further studied by our two new members and the other members of council, so that we come back and make a more well-rounded decision on this. So I think we can defer action on this unless there is objection. Okay.
I agree.
Okay. So then with that, we then look to included in that was a activity to not issue or to enforce the existing regulations that are on the books, which are more restrictive in terms of lot coverage. And what item I2, and I'll read it now, is presentation and possible action on ordinance to enact a moratorium on the application of the requirements of section 195-75 of the municipal code of the city of Lewis to properties located between the Lewis and Rehoboth Canal and the Delaware Bay for 6 months to allow the provisions of this action to be amended. We have discussed that in the past and deferred action on it. It is before us tonight, knowing that we're deferring action on the proposed amendments to the ordinance. This seemed to be a way to work with those individuals in the community who are waiting, who have building permits in the queue, and move forward. And this amendment or this action, if we take it, would allow those building permits to move forward. Anne-Marie, do we have information as to how many building permits might be in the queue?
When I last checked, there were 6.
Okay.
That was Friday.
And that would be that would enable these projects to move forward, and it would also enable other projects over the next 6 months, up to 6 months. Hopefully, we will be able to work through any issues and develop a new ordinance. I know you have been working with DENREC in terms of getting information on rewriting the ordinance or amending the ordinance as we considered it in the past. And I think hopefully before 6 months, we will be able to come forward with an ordinance that would be something we could consider. Any other comments from you, Anne-Marie, regarding this?
Well, if it's longer than 6 months, can we extend it?
I think we would have to come back and see where we are at the end of 6 months. I wouldn't rule that out, but I also wouldn't say that it's something we would automatically do. Let's see. I think we need to work hard to get this done within 6 months.
I have a question about this, please. Anne-Marie, from your experience working in another town and possibly with the same advisors within the state government, have you ever worked with a moratorium before in this kind of capacity where you implement, we trigger a moratorium and then work towards creating the legislation and get it done within the 6-month period?
I have not. I do think, though, we've had a number of discussions with DENREC over the months and internally, and we have the benefit now of the feedback from the public. So I think that there are certainly some options that we could bring to DENREC that would, we might be able to bring something back in less than 6 months.
So is your idea that you will make those comments that we've collected from the public, and make those available to the DENREC staff to sift through? How is this going to work?
I'm not sure that they're going to be interested in sifting through, but I think that Janelle and I are able to go through the comments, go through other municipal and county ordinances under this statute, and have discussions with DENREC. And then let's not forget that one of the Planning Commission's recommendation that they made was that we would do something where the city would use pervious pavement when we do work in that area. So I think that based on feedback we've gotten, other similar ordinances throughout the state, and what we've heard from the public, I think that we can probably figure out something to put together that would that we can work with DENREC on.
Okay, thank you. And I guess I have one last question. Will the public have any opportunity to comment on the proposed legislation? Can you describe that, please,
Yes.
for us, please?
So if we go back and do something and it's markedly different than what is on item I1, then it would require a public hearing. So we would at the very least have a public hearing, but we might also be able to, once we have some more concrete ideas, have a public workshop to get feedback on what ideas are palatable or not palatable.
I see. So this is a very ambitious goal, I guess, isn't it? In 6 months to achieve all this. There's a lot of work to be done.
Yes.
It's ambitious, but I think it, again, I think we have the benefit of the last 6 or so months that we've been working on it. So we're not just dropping into it new. So I think it's definitely manageable.
Okay. I do have a question about, I would like to go back and make sure I understand fully the consequence of this moratorium with respect to people. I understand that it would affect people whose applications for building permits have been held in queue. And do I also understand that it would be available for any people who are not already in queue? Property owners, homeowners who would like to make improvements to their property, that they would be able to go forward?
That is correct. They would have that 6-month period. So
and that 6-month period to file their permit, is that correct?
Correct.
It's not to complete the job, it's to file the permit, right?
To file the permit.
For the permit.
And that just
Right.
pertains to the 6, you said you had 6 applications?
Well, so there's 6 permit applications right now, but there could be other people who have purchased properties and have had architects or home designers working on building plans for the last 3 or 4 months that we don't even know about, and they might put that on hold. So, they could be ready in the next week or 6 weeks or something.
Right.
Is there a way, excuse me, Tim,
Go ahead, please.
is there a way
Go ahead,
that we
please.
know how far along these applications are? In other words, are these individuals who have already put money out in some way that if we don't do this, it would cause a problem?
I think that there are, and Glenn, I know you might have some input on this too, but I think that there are a number of property owners. Some of them are on tonight because I see names in the attendees who have attended public hearings and other meetings where this has been discussed, where people have purchased properties with the expectation of doing certain things, that when we had to cap it at 20% impervious cover under the current ordinance, it made those plans not feasible. And some of those are, some are new homes, some are home additions, some are just
Right.
other types of things that they would be doing, whether it's, you know, a driveway or hardscaping.
Patio. Whatever.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
And so what would happen is the expectation would be that these folks would be able to, these applicants would be able to develop their plans, develop their properties to what coverage, what lot coverage, and what's, you know, what are the details of it?
To the lot coverage that is specified in their zoning classification. So most of the properties are zoned R3, which is the beach residential, and that allows 65%. But, you know, what, there could be properties that are in other zoning classifications, so it would be whatever that zoning classification is.
Right. And Anne-Marie, for people who who are attending the meeting who would like to find that kind of, where would you direct them within the code book to look for that, to find those kinds of, you know, where they are in what zone and, you know, the lot coverage?
So the zoning
What
map,
chapter?
the zoning map is available on the city's website under, let me just make sure I'm correct. It's in a couple of places, but you can go to the
Right.
planning and development under departments, and there are links to the zoning map, so people can look that way. And also under government on the website, there is a link to the city code book, and zoning is in chapter 197, and there is a table that's an attachment to that chapter that's listed right up front. The attachments are listed right up front when you click on 197. There's there are tables
Like-
of permitted uses, and then your lot coverage and building height and all of those things.
Right.
So a
right.
really easy way to find it is if you use the city's interactive zoning map that's on the planning and development page, because then if you click on your zoning, a box will pop up and it'll have links to permitted uses and dimensional requirements that link directly to those tables Anne-Marie was talking about.
Thank you, Janelle. And Anne-Marie, would this, how would this affect any commercial properties?
Well, again, that any commercial properties would be able to develop under the lot coverages for their regular zone. So I'm going to click on now that Janelle remind me that that's all in there. It would allow, I think like 90%.
It is, I think.
Okay,
So
thank you. Thank you for answering my questions.
Are there any other questions?
I don't have a question, just a quick comment. I think this proposed ordinance is much needed. It provides a lot of clarity to at least 6 applicants, but I'm aware of many more who have been trying to understand exactly what the lay of land is. And I'm glad we're taking this up, and I think, and I urge everyone to support it. I think it really provides a lot of clarity, and it's very responsive to the 6 people who are currently in the queue and the others who would like to apply for a permit and move forward with their project. So I think this is a great, this is a good ordinance for us to be considering.
Thank you. Any other comments, Carolyn? Did you have comments?
No, he said where I was going. Thanks.
So this would enable projects to move forward for up to 6 months. But as was identified, it's an ambitious project for us as council to come together and get this organized. I know Anne-Marie and Janelle have been working hard with diligently with DENREC to try to come up with whatever changes would be acceptable.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to move forward with this moratorium?
I make a motion.
I make a motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
Mayor, since it is a zoning, would you please go around the room and ask for reasons? Thanks.
Okay, so Andrew, would you like to start?
I'll vote yes for
Wait a
some of the
minute,
things. that-
someone needs to make the motion first.
No, we have the motion and a second already.
Yeah.
We have a first and a second.
We have a motion and a second. Khalil and Carolyn.
But,
Uh,
okay,
Who's talking?
so now it's a discussion time, right? Can't we ask some more questions?
Discuss it. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I do have a question I'd like to propose, and maybe this would be considered a friendly amendment. Would it be possible for us to, since we know that the area that is affected by this ordinance will be in fact an area that is in a environmentally sensitive area, would it be possible for us to include language to encourage people to use pervious surfaces in their choice of materials for driveways, patios, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, I guess what how I respond to that is that, you know, this is an ordinance that won't actually get codified in the code book, but it does have the force of law. So we don't typically put words of
Right.
encouragement in ordinances. I mean, that's probably better for a resolution type stuff. While clearly you all support the use of those sorts of materials, I'm not sure that actually writing it into the ordinance, it won't have any legal effect.
But
writing it into the
This
ordinance.
isn't an ordinance, isn't it? It's a moratorium, isn't it?
A moratorium actually is an
Go
ordinance.
on.
It's a law that you're, right. It actually is an ordinance because it's a law you're enacting. It won't go into the code book because it's for a limited duration, but it actually is in the form of
Right.
ordinance.
Okay, I thought maybe that gave us a little more flexibility by the fact that it's a moratorium. Okay. I'm corrected.
Do you have other things you wanted to,
All right.
Tim, did you have?
No,
other
that's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
Because what I guess I'm trying to message to my peers here is that we think we know in what direction we're going with respect to trying to address or try to encourage people to use pervious surfaces. And it would be a nice accommodation if people would consider that. That's all I'll say.
I guess my question is, at this time, are we at that point? I mean, unless I misunderstood, we're sort of at the point where we, the newbies, need to come on board and learn about this.
I think what Tim is, your councilperson Richard is suggesting is that you're going into a period now where you're going to lift the restrictions so that people
Mhm.
can file applications and the 6 that are in the queue can go forward. And I think councilperson Richard is suggesting that while those applications are going to be proceeding, you as a council still would prefer that to the extent people can, they use permeable type materials in their construction activities, which is probably a valiant goal, but probably not properly placed within the moratorium ordinance. So as he says, the messaging he wants is, you know, you're going to move forward, but try to use the materials that are sensible.
Right, and I would note that this discussion is going to be and is available online, and I think our building officials will be attuned to it and could remind someone coming in that, you know, they should consider using permeable surfaces as they discuss building permits with applicants.
All right, thank you. Well, then I'll withdraw my friendly amendment and let it proceed.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim. Okay, I think then we are ready to vote on this unless there's other discussion. Andrew, you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. Yeah, I think we've obviously found ourselves in a very difficult spot as a town. And I think this gives us a way to allow those that have been in the queue to move forward. I'm going to vote yes, because frankly, when I took office, I wasn't aware of this restrictive nature of this provision. So in a sense, I'm giving the folks who are affected directly by this a moratorium, but I'm also giving myself a moratorium so that we can move forward in a direction that is responsible. But I don't think we're there yet. in terms of, these people weren't aware that this was on the books. And we should all look to move in that direction together. And I think this allows us some time to get there together. So I'll vote yes for those reasons.
Okay. Tim, you want to go? You want to vote?
Did you call me?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I think it's great to have some breathing room. And I think this moratorium will accomplish that and keep everyone's feet to the fire so that we work towards a successful resolution within the next 6 months. I look forward to working with the community and council on that, on the ordinance, on the legislation.
Great.
Thank you.
Carolyn?
I believe people need the time to have this breathing room. That's kind of what we're doing right now. And the fact that they have their, money and contracts and those kind of things tied up, it just gives us time to take a deep breath. And it also doesn't end up penalizing people who knew nothing about this prior to what has taken place. So I'd have to say I'm in favor of the moratorium.
Leo?
Yeah, as I stated earlier, this provides much clarity to the many folks out there that are trying to move forward with their projects, and for that reason, I will also vote yes.
I also will vote yes for the reasons stated, but also I think that it's important that people understand and that we take a good look at this regulation ordinance and come up with something that is not only workable for the community, but meets the environmental concerns that we are always trying to address in our efforts to regulate the city. So I too will vote yes. Thank you. The motion carries. Moving on to item I3 is presentation possible action on an ordinance to amend Article 9, Environmental Protection Regulations, Chapter 197, Zoning of the Municipal Code of the City of Lewis, Delaware, by creating 197-78.1 Resiliency Ordinance on Sea Level Rise, Design Guidelines, and a resolution for resiliency, sea level rise design standards, and resiliency on sea level ordinance draft. I am again of the position that we have two new members of council and they have not had adequate time to study this ordinance. And I again feel that this ordinance requires more work in spite of the fact that the Planning Commission has worked hard on it. And we've had a public hearing and we had a lot of public comment on it. And so I again would prefer that we defer action on this, recommend that we defer action on this until such time as we have new members of council and have had a better chance to digest this and come up with some recommendations. Unless there is other discussion here, I think we can defer this item. Any other discussion? Okay. Hearing none, I would move then on to item I4, which is a presentation of possible action on the creation. And it says ad hoc, but I would say executive committee to make recommendations on possible amendments to address the sea level rise. I think that it's important that we take a good look at this, not only in current condition, but looking prospectively into the future. And we have been in contact, and Anne Marie has been more in contact with the Coastal Programs Management Group, who is willing to work with us to help address some of these concerns that were raised during the sea level rise ordinance. And Anne Marie, would you care to comment on your conversation with the coastal programs?
Sure. So we were approached, I guess about a month to 2 months ago by Delaware Coastal Programs and the Institute for Public Administration at the University of Delaware. And the Delaware Coastal Programs Resilient Community Partnership grant, it's kind of a grant, but really they do the work. So it's a partnership. They had approached the Institute for Public Administration about doing something together and selecting a community to work with, and they chose to select Lewis. And we had been talking about some of the sea level rise stuff, and we thought that we had a direction that we were going with them. We had a meeting. Those of you who are not newly sworn in this evening will remember we had a meeting that included the Sea Level Rise Subcommittee and City Council to talk about how they could help us. And after the public hearing, and there were staff from Delaware Coastal Programs and Institute for Public Administration who listened to the public hearing and watched it, and I think others who have watched it since it's been on YouTube. And the discussion that we had was kind of taking a step back and starting kind of a citizen engagement process where the Institute for Public Administration would take the lead on facilitating discussions so that we can, kind of move toward consensus on how we can address some of these issues. One of the things that we heard in the public hearing was that some property owners felt that they were not, they were not aware that this was going on. Certainly they were public meetings, but if you look at the city's, meeting calendar, we have many public meetings. And I think that the discussion we had was, if we start with a kind of some listening sessions that the community could come to that would be virtual, that from that, this committee could potentially be formed, and that representation from the Planning Commission be included, so that it's not taking them out of the process, it's just adding other stakeholders as well.
Thank you, Anne Marie. This is a wonderful opportunity.
And may I ask a question, please?
Go ahead, Tim.
Go ahead, Ted. I'm sorry. No, please go ahead.
All I was going to say was this is a wonderful opportunity to work with the coastal programs with a grant situation to help us come to a consensus about sea level rise and how we wanted to address it going forward. It avails us, provides a lot of scientific knowledge to us and a lot of university advice regarding how the sea level rise issue is being looked at throughout the area, throughout the state and the area.
And they have trained facilitators at the Institute for Public Administration who would be involved in kind of facilitating that discussion so that they can start to find the consensus, the areas of consensus.
Okay.
You want to comment?
Yeah, I have just a couple of comments. First of all, I want to acknowledge and thank the members of the Planning Commission who have worked on this very difficult subject matter, and the contribution that they've made to further our understanding of this subject matter is meaningful, and I do appreciate it. Anne Marie, with respect to the members, do I understand from what you've described, can we expect that I'll call them facilitators, the people from possibly the Institute for Public Administration, will they be, they'll be handling workshops or working with the community is that how this works?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get if you could describe that a little bit for the people who are listening to attending this meeting. So should they expect within the next 30 days, there might be a public announcement of, of these kinds of sessions going on? How are we going to do this?
What we talked about was
yes.
scheduling some listening sessions in June. So we would expect that they would be scheduled. We're waiting until tonight to see if this is of interest to mayor and council, obviously, before we move forward. But the idea is we're going to regroup with them either tomorrow or Wednesday, I can't remember. And then based on the feedback we get this evening, we will, start to roll that out.
I see. And then will they will have people in the, I guess it's in the coastal management programs, who will be the subject matter experts to help advise the committee. Is that how that's going to work?
So we have Delaware Coastal Programs, and they have access to all of the, current information that DENREC has, that NOAA has, that FEMA has. So yes, they will be there with that detailed information.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Other questions? If there are no further questions, is there a motion to go ahead and create this executive committee working with the coastal programs and IPA? Carl or Khalil, thank you very much. Carolyn, a second, thank you very much. Any further discussion?
I have just one question. Is this committee also going to involve members of the planning commission or the sea level?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I would expect is that in either June or July, depending on, the mayor, hate to put my eyes on you there, sir, but that we would bring forward, based on kind of the initial round of reaching out to the public, that the mayor would propose the names for council to sign off on, so that we can make sure that, that the planning commission is included, that the Board of Public Works is included, that there are property owners,
Member of our council.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And that there's representation from both the beach community and people who live on this side of the canal.
Right.
Who will serve on the committee, is that correct?
Correct.
Right. Okay.
But that
All
would
right,
happen
thank you.
in a public meeting. So this is, no, it's not going to just suddenly emerge that this group exists. There will be an actual listing and confirmation from council.
It would actually be
see.
confirmation. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
We have a motion and a second.
Mhm.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll vote aye as well. So we will move forward with that idea. Thank you, Anne Marie, for reaching out. And I again feel very strongly that we were very fortunate to be selected to have this grant come to us. And I think that will be most helpful as we look to. And I think one of the things that they expect to get out of this is some ideas that they can carry to other coastal communities and talk to them about how sea level rise, how they might deal with sea level rise. So again, here we are in a situation where we're in the front leadership position of this effort by the Coastal Programs Group. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us. Thank you all. Moving then on to item I5 is presentation possible action regarding the waivers of the lands of Verdon, major subdivision to be located off Kings Highway, Sussex County Tax Map 335-8.15-41.00. This subdivision has been talked about for a long time, and I think we had a public hearing on it. Nell, you want to talk to us a little bit about this?
Sure. So this is a continuation of some waiver requests as the application moves through its major subdivision process. So before it can continue to move forward, there's some outstanding items, which includes some waivers. The applicant has requested 4 different waivers. The council has already approved 2 of them. At their last meeting, they asked for additional items regarding the final 2, which is actually it's kind of 3, but it's the street width right of way and then the curbing. So the street lights have already been, that waiver has already been approved, and the elimination of the sidewalks has already been approved. So what they're asking for is for a reduction in the right of way from 50 feet to 40 feet and a reduction of the street width down to 24 feet and the elimination of curbing along the road. And they were doing that because they were proposing drainage on the side of the roads with their because they're doing porous pavement for the road itself. Additional information was asked because there was a lot of concern at the last council meeting about on-street parking. Mr. Mendelis and Mr. Robertson, the applicant and the city's attorneys, have discussed and come up with an understanding of how to address the on-street parking. That information was provided in your packet. I know it was a lengthy report, but I wanted to make sure I got all the information in there. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And Mr. Palmer, who is the applicant's engineer, and Mr. Robertson are here to provide additional information and answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Janelle. So we're down to just a couple of items here. And I think we certainly look forward to getting this approved. I noticed the reduction in the street width to 40 feet. That seems like a logical request given the width or the size of the development and the small number of homes on it, and the fact that it's really a very short street. So I think in terms of the 40 feet request, that's a reasonable request. The curbing, given porous pavement, is probably also an item that has a great deal of merit. The idea of a 24 street width gives me some concern, given though that the only way in is going to be the same way out, meaning it's a dead end, and there's very little room on a 24-foot street to turn a vehicle around. And so you're going to have a lot of backing in and out of this street. And so that particular element of the waivers does give me concern. I know you've addressed it by saying the other 4 feet could be left open or grassy, and you've mentioned that you could leave it without encroachments. However, based on the history of this community, I find that encroachments are easily made and they're very hard to enforce. And I think we may be presenting a challenge for our code enforcement officers going forward if we do not have a paved width that is a little bit wider than the proposed width of 24 feet.
If I may, I live on a street that is exactly about 16 feet wide, and it is an impossibility to have any kind of an emergency vehicle come down here. If somebody has work on their house, you cannot park on the side and get out. So I am really, really concerned that it would be 24 feet wide as opposed to 28, because that is really small.
Other comments?
Sort of an idea, because I know there's no sidewalks in this neighborhood, whether we could accommodate a street that's similar to the design of Coleman, that has the brick on the one side and porous material on the other. And maybe by having pavers like that, you can come somewhere in between the 28 and the 24. Not that we want the workmanship that's been done on Coleman, but
Right.
the
Yeah, really.
project's going to end up. Seriously, this gives an opportunity to put contractors on notice that that's some pretty sloppy work, just in terms of the way that the job site was left. But the end result looks pretty decent so far. So I wonder if that's an idea that could sort of be a compromise.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just real quick respond to that. First of all, thanks again for allowing us the opportunity to present this evening. We appreciate that 2 of the waivers were granted, I guess last month, or actually the month prior at this point. So thank you for that. What we tried to do on this design, particularly for the newer members, and welcome to the Lewis Council for the 2 new members. I look forward to appearing in front of you. But what we tried to do was basically come up with a compromise that works for this 5-lot subdivision. Unlike so many others, as the rest of you all know, this one was designed for Mr. Verdon and his family. And there were some design elements that came into play with regard to that. One is, he's not selling these lots, so he can't recoup money from an end purchaser, like a for-profit developer would. The other thing that we were looking at with the the overall design and also the street width, frankly, is he's got that specimen ginkgo tree on there. And for Ms. Jones and Mr. Saliba, that is I think it's a state specimen tree that Mr. Verdon is very proud of. And one of the things that's driven the design on this throughout the whole, the whole process was how do we best preserve that and not do anything that's going to affect its root structure or the how well that tree does. We're dealing with irregular lot sizes, which in combination with that tree kind of made for the lot design the way you see it. We're also working with the Parks and Rec folks to try to optimize or maximize the open space. That's why there's open space down the side nearest the library, so that it's one contiguous, big piece of open space as opposed to like a pocket section of open space that's not really usable to anybody. Mr. Palmer worked with the byways folks extensively, and that resulted in landscaping the appearance from Kings Highway and from Freeman Highway. But the other thing that kind of comes into play here is that we worked with DelDOT quite a bit on that entrance onto Kings Highway. We wanted to try to make that so that it was the minimum disturbance of Kings Highway as possible, so that we could basically use the same sort of residential entrance for this street without having to do all sorts of design with curbing and depressions and have, just everything that would be a major intersection. We've tried to avoid that. The other thing is, by doing that, we were able to maintain the landscaping along the breakwater trail, the bike trail, and more importantly, you can kind of see it on this drawing that Janelle's put up, between this subdivision's driveway and the neighboring property to give it a landscape feature along the front of it, sort of a little bit of a buffer that makes it nice in appearance along Kings Highway. What we run into is a practical matter.
By the byways.
Excuse me?
That was specifically requested by the byways folks.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Bob. I didn't realize you were on there at the point, but yeah, no, and that was part of that long conversation. And what happens is if we start changing, and Bob, I'd like you to jump in on this, but if we start changing those dimensions of that street, that impacts all of that. And particularly, I think, Bob, it impacts DelDOT's view of this and also the landscaping that we worked out with the byways. So Bob, with that, I'd like to turn it over to you if I could.
Sure, thanks. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As Vince said, we worked with the folks at DelDOT pretty extensively to secure the entrance geometry that we've depicted on the enclosed exhibit. With the street reduction to 24 feet wide, which would provide for two 12-foot wide travel lanes, which is essentially the same as what exists on Kings Highway at this location. DelDOT, proffering this entrance to DelDOT, we approached it as essentially a shared residential driveway for 5 lots. And DelDOT has provisions in their development coordination manual to allow these sorts of entrances to occur. The folks at DelDOT were very concerned that if the street were to be constructed any wider than the 24 feet, that DelDOT would require that we follow the development coordination manual for subdivision entrances, which would essentially consume the entire frontage that Mr. Verdon has on Kings Highway, which means all of the existing sidewalk that is out there today would disappear. DelDOT is allowing us to tie into the back of the existing sidewalk, and there is an extent of driveway curb, if you will, driveway curb and sidewalk that can be driven across. And it was designed for that purpose when DelDOT redid the sidewalks for the trail. So by widening the street, it would essentially obliterate the existing pedestrian way,
Is
as
this
well
street,
as the, I'm sorry.
Is this street allowing for emergency vehicles to be able to come in and turn around? Because it's a one-way in.
Yes,
That-
ma'am.
That's my concern. An emergency vehicle, how does that work?
Yes, ma'am. Janelle, if you could zoom into the rear portion of the subdivision. Councilperson Jones, Janelle is showing one of the driveways that actually is not part of the driveway for Lot C. That's part of the fire marshal's requirement for
To make
emergency
a U-turn there?
turnaround. Yes, ma'am.
Ah.
So the
Okay.
vehicle would.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
yeah, so there's a fire truck turnaround on lots
Oh,
A
I
and
see,
C.
I see.
Wait a minute. Mr. Palmer, are you telling me, are you suggesting that there's gonna be signage in that section of the road that would prevent someone from parking? You know, in effect that,
Yes, sir.
in that, what looks to be like an extension of the driveway? Is that correct? Is that
Yes,
what
sir.
you?
Yes, sir. There's no parking signs required, as well as I believe, and Mr. Robertson can confirm this, but there is provisions in the covenants also restricting parking
I see.
in this area.
This has
To
been
reserve-
tested already? This has been tested already in terms of an emergency vehicle coming in and you've seen that it actually can do a turn and get out of there?
It hasn't been tested on the ground because we haven't constructed the street yet.
Yeah, I know, but I
uh,
mean, when you say that, okay, you're going to specifically build this part for the purpose of an emergency vehicle to turn around and leave.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am,
so
that's right.
as part
Okay,
of
I
this,
got you.
as
Okay,
part of the subdivision, the Office of the State Fire Marshal is going to review it to make sure it meets their turning radiuses for the fire trucks and fire
Oh, okay.
safety. So that if they're successful with this, then they'll move forward with the minor subdivision, and that will be one of the agencies they'll have to get. And we've also made sure that then we can also get a trash truck around it.
Mhm.
I haven't.
And
Yeah,
one thing, sorry.
Go ahead, please, go ahead.
No, I was just going to point out, because I know Ms. Jones, Councilperson Jones, asked this question or is concerned about, streets that she's familiar with. And I'm certainly familiar with streets in Lewis as well, particularly in town. I would just turn, I guess it's page 5 of 12 of her report. She also, this is what makes it a little bit unique, I think, compared to a lot of properties in town. She points out, as we did last time, the driveways should accommodate themselves 4 vehicles each is currently drawn, which is double the required spaces. And as she points out, which I think is accurate, there will probably be a 2-car garage for each home, which would add at least 1 space or possibly 2 in addition. So there's plenty of, we greatly exceed the requirements for off-street parking. And the other thing that's kind of unique about this compared to, in my mind, just about every place else in Lewis, it's not the beach where there's the attraction where you draw people in to park there who don't live there. We've got the library next door with that expansive lot, so there's people that park there. It's not in the commercial downtown area where people are walking to go to either events, say at the Historical Society or the restaurants and shops downtown. This really is a private driveway that's going to serve these 5 lots. There's not even a connection, pedestrian otherwise, to Freeman Highway. So, I can see that those would be important in other locations, but this one really is kind of unique that I think, there's not the concern so much of, people parking on the road or not being able to park in their own, even during construction. If you can fit 4 or 5 cars in your driveway during construction, I think you're going to be in good shape. So it's a reasonable concern. I just think in this situation, what we have is adequate and just not overbuilt. So I just wanted to point that out, particularly the reference to Janelle's report.
Thank you, appreciate that.
I think it's interesting to note that the depressed curb along the Kings Highway section runs the full width of this property. So it's already there. The whole width of this property and all the way up to the railroad the trail crossing is fully depressed curb.
Mhm.
I walk it every day, so I'm very familiar with it being depressed the entire length of the width of this. And there you know, you mentioned that Mr. Verdon is doing this for his personal family, which is true, but there is no guarantee that they will remain that way.
Right.
That's correct.
As we go into the future.
Let's,
There is another point that I'd like to make, and that is one thing that could be looked at is you leave the access to Kings Highway, the narrower width, and you flare the street just 4 feet when you get into the development to accommodate the concern I have about whether or not code enforcement officers would be needing to enforce the planting of whatever or the installation of whatever in the right of way that you're alleging could be used for parking, that could be grass. So I do have those concerns. I mean, there's no reason why this road couldn't, and we see it happening lots of places where driveways flare when they get onto a property. And that's
Right.
kind of what be done here.
right. May I?
I have a couple questions real quickly. Mr. Robertson, with my concerns are along with Carolyn's, and that is access for emergency vehicles. So 2 quick things. One is along Breck Lane, would cars be permitted to park on, can they only park in the driveway or can they park on the street as well? And I'm asking that question with regards to access for emergency vehicles.
Sure. So how we designed it, and I'm going to let Mr. Palmer sort of follow me up because he knows the engineering side way more than me. But sort of in light of the last conversations that we had, what we're looking at was to accommodate the parking, but also accommodate the pervious areas. And you actually see those sort of hashed sections so that there would be off-street parking. Because the way the conversation kind of went, and if I remember right, I think Councilperson Osler was sort of involved in this too, was, you know, the need for off-street parking was not that frequent and sort of everybody's estimate, or not everybody's, and you know, the conversation. So it was sort of like, okay, well, how can we accommodate that without also overbuilding Seb Lane, now Breck Lane? And that's why those hashed areas were set aside, and then you see it 4 foot parking area typically. And that led to the language that me and Mr. Mendelis worked out about recording the provision of restrictions that you couldn't park there, put shrubs there, or excuse me, you could park there, you couldn't build there, put landscaping or shrubs or anything that would obstruct that area. And that in turn, keeping it grass, worked into the drainage design that Mr. Palmer developed, which is a really long answer. That's the background. So,
Tim, I'd like to hear. This is Tim Ritzert speaking. I'd like to hear some more about the drainage issue, because as I recall, when the last time we discussed this issue, this project, it was the drainage issue that caused us to terminate the conversation, with the idea that it would be reworked or looked at again. And what is the drainage design now?
so I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Palmer, because it sounded like it was just uncertainty about it, not that it wasn't workable. But anyhow, if he could explain it, Bob, if you want to jump on and give an overview of it.
Sure thing. So first I'll about the stormwater management. The second would be clarify for Councilperson Saliba about on-street parking. So stormwater, we've had some preliminary soil investigations completed to assess the soil permeability, the ability of the ground to allow infiltration to occur. And towards the top of this exhibit, we put together a cross section of how the road would be constructed. And based on the preliminary soil investigations that we've completed, we would build what basically a 2 foot thick stone sump underneath of Breck Lane, and all of the runoff that would land on Breck Lane and the driveways, as well as the downspouts, would be captured in that stone sump, if you will, and allowed to infiltrate. And those swales that Janelle is pointing to, those would address the runoff from the front yards to prevent the runoff from the front yards from getting into the porous paving.
And how deep are those swales, sir?
About 12 inches at the deepest point.
Okay, thank you.
And the side slopes of the swales are easily drivable, either with a vehicle or with, and certainly with a riding mower. We chose 6-to-1 side slopes, and that's in keeping with DELDOT's design requirements for state maintained roads that have open sections.
Right.
So 100% of the runoff from the impervious surfaces, the roads, the sidewalks, the rooftops, etc., would be captured and held on site through the 100-year storm event.
And those stormwater, I'm not quite sure what words you used for those. They were not stormwater retention ponds, but the assets that would collect the water, they would be owned by an HOA. Is that correct?
The depressions would be within the they would be either within the city's right of way or within the 10-foot wide drainage easement that the code requires run across the fronts of the properties for drainage and utilities. So I'm kind of unclear, Councilperson Richard, whether the whether these swales would be maintained by the Board of Public Works or if they would be maintained by the community. I think from a practical perspective, the community would maintain it because of the lawn maintenance and that sort of thing.
Right. Let me ask you a couple other questions, please. What is the right-of-way width of Breck Lane?
We're proposing a 40-foot width.
Okay, so 40-foot width. And what is the length of that road, please?
197 feet, I believe.
197.
Yes, sir. Bear with me for a second. I actually have the plan up on my computer, and I can verify that. Yes, 197 feet.
Wow, you're barely getting that one in, aren't you?
By the skin of our teeth. Yes, sir.
Yeah, by the skin of your chinny chin chin. Okay. Let's see. We have a requirement in our code book that states that if a drainage system is constructed parallel to the road, that the actual easement has to be an additional 5 feet wide. If you stated that the right of way would be 40 feet, is that correct?
That's correct, with 10-foot wide drainage easement running by and with the right of way.
So that's not an additional 10 feet. That to a sum of 50 feet, that would be a total of 40 feet.
The right of way being 40 feet, yes, sir.
And that includes the drainage ditch, correct?
Mhm.
Yes.
Just to
Okay.
be clear, I don't, I appreciate the conversation, but I don't want anybody to think that it's a ditch per se. Mr. Palmer, maybe if you could explain sort of the width of one of those swales. We talked about it being 12 feet or 12 inches to the bottom, but how wide would one of those be? Just to give the idea, of how relatively gradual it is.
Sure. Bear with me here for 1 second. 12 feet wide at the top and 2 feet at the bottom.
Okay.
12 inches wide, you mean at the top?
No, 12 feet.
If you scroll to the right a little more, you can see the area that's yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can see on the easterly side of the road, the ditch is 6 feet wide. So you can see the 6 foot width, the 2 foot bottom, and then it's another 6 foot to get to the 6 feet to get to the top of bank on the other side. So shallow. It's we're calling it a ditch. A ditch or a swale. It's really little more than a shallow depression.
Right.
Yeah, barely.
And the
noticeable.
purpose of that is to collect the runoff from the paved street, correct? From the road?
No, sir.
No?
That feature is to collect the runoff from the front yards.
From the front yards.
Yeah, the road
Okay.
itself is designed to be porous. So that water is actually going to go, is designed to go through the road.
Yeah,
Okay,
and we're gonna have to
straight
talk
down.
about that also because our design manual does not include any kind of design specs for a porous road.
Right. That you can definitely discuss at the subdivision process
Not now.
position. Because
Yeah.
today we are just discussing the 2 leftover waivers, which is.
I understand.
Yep. I'm just making sure everybody's on the same page.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Yep. But it all kind of fits together because we're building towards the finished product. Right?
I'd be happy to answer your questions if it's permitted.
I think
I
we're not
understand.
going to discuss the porous pavement right now. That really comes into the design phase.
Right. All right. Thank you. Go ahead. Yield the floor.
Okay, so to kind of clarify Mr. Robertson's comments for Councilperson Saliba, the design that you see with a 24-foot wide road width and a 4-foot wide grass area on one side, which we really have grass areas on both sides, but we were reluctant to show the grass area on the westerly side of Breck Lane because that's the side where the ginkgo tree is, and we'd like to do our best to limit disturbance in and around that tree, both during construction and moving forward as the community is built and used by Mr. Verdon's family. But with a 24-foot wide road, the minimum safe travel lane width is 10 feet wide. And so with 24 feet, that gives us 2 10-foot wide travel lanes and 4 feet of paving and 4 feet of grass area. And that total 8 feet of area that allows for, that's the equivalent of a parallel parking, the width of a parallel parking space. So could easily accommodate parking on one side. Our presentation to the Planning Commission didn't allow parking on either side simply because for the Christmas and Thanksgiving holiday, the occasional birthday when you might have more than just your family over. We didn't feel, because we exceeded the requirements for off-street parking, we didn't feel that on-street parking was necessarily warranted for a community of this size. But given the comments from the Planning Commission and the concern about providing on-street parking, we've sort of deviated from that philosophy. And I would like to see parking on one side, but that's, I guess, the point of the discussion this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Which side would you propose?
Robert, this is you would consider the optimum design for the space you have.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
I assume that you're proposing the parking would be on, right now you're talking about it being on both sides, but you're only proposing the parking right there and there, correct?
Yes, on the easterly side of Breck Lane. Yes, sir.
I see.
And so the right of way coming up off of Kings Highway would be a consistent 40-foot wide right of way. up to where that lot where, no, Janelle, the cursor to the right. Up there, that lot right there, where it would then kind of have that little dog thing to accommodate that additional part of the street. Well, as Mr. Robertson called it, a driveway, right?
So this is
Actually-
actually an easement over the property line for the turnaround. The right of way actually is here.
Oh,
So this is an easement that's proposed that would again limit the use of that that area to provide the ability for emergency vehicles and city vehicles to turn around.
but that would be part of what Mr. Verdon is asking for the city to own and maintain, correct?
No.
That surface, that surface,
Would
that
be-
turnaround accommodation would not be part of the responsibility of the city.
Correct. Because it's in the easement. It's not in the city right of way.
That's correct. I understand the difference. I just,
And-
because my
and
next
then Mr.
question was,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
And if I'm wrong, I'm on that. Mr. Palmer and Mr. Robertson can clarify that. But I believe that was the intent, that this was going to be privately maintained because it is part of the easement.
Is that correct, Mr. Robertson?
That is correct. You know, and what gets to that is, you know, that at the end of Breck Lane, you know, we have sort of the, you know, it's wider there within the right of way. So there's all kinds of opportunities for, you know, one of the things we're looking at was trash trucks as much as, you know, emergency
Sure.
vehicles, because they're in and out all the time. That's why, you know, really the whole thing flares out at the end if you're looking at the bottom, you know, within the right of way. So that truly was just extra based on Mr. Palmer's conversations with Janelle, with the Planning Commission, and also with Mr. O'Donnell from GMB when we were going through the design of it.
You know, I look at the tree and I have to believe that tree, and I love that ginkgo tree. It's a beautiful tree. But you've got two driveways that are already encroaching into the outer ring of that tree.
Yeah.
Very seriously.
Those driveways are actually at the edge of the drip line, not unlike Breck Lane. We have, bear with me here for a second, and I'll.
Can you also point out didn't you say there are two ginkgo trees?
No, there's just the one.
Just the one. Okay. I was a little confused about that. Okay, thank you.
It's also possible that the driveways might shift a little bit to up and down based on the placement of a house if this moves forward.
Right, but that's the other part that Ted has not spoken to. In anticipation of a driveway, we can expect a house to be built on that lot. And that foundation would certainly be within the drip line of that tree.
Not necessarily, because that large dashed line is the zoning line. Remember this one, we tried to get it resolved, but it has the split zoning of R2 and R4, which frankly kind of affects the design of the lots. So where Janelle has the cursor, that's actually part of that lot. So it's actually the largest lot, and it's the one Mr. Verdon's going to keep because he wants to build his house on the lot where the ginkgo tree is, just because he loves it so much, and also to make sure that nothing adverse happens to it. But yeah, there's plenty of room to do that.
I see. I apologize. I misread that. I apologize.
No, it's understandable because there's lots of lines on here, so that it was worth the question.
Right. Okay. And could you indulge me at the at the terminus of Brick Lane? Would you, Janelle, draw your cursor across where the right of way actually ends? Is it that line? That's what I thought. Okay, that's the end.
That's
the end of the right of way.
Right. So that from that line forward towards that last lot, that's all private driveway.
Correct.
Uh-huh. Thank you. Okay.
Is there any further discussion on this? I think the other issue was the issue of curbs, which has already been discussed. If you put in the swales, you're not going to have curbs. Are there other comments? Or did you have comments further?
No, I don't have any further comments, but probably, Mr. Paul would probably just refer to it as a flat bottom swale. Ditch is not as good of a term. I think flat bottom swale sounds cooler.
Thank you, Andrew.
There's a song lyric in there somewhere.
I was gonna say, it could be a great band name. Yeah.
I'm not going to sing it either, just for everybody's clarification.
You can write the lyrics, Vince. All right, Council, what is your pleasure here in terms of, we've had a lot of discussion about this. What is your pleasure? Does anyone want to make a motion regarding, we have 3 items here, actually 2 that we need.
Motion. I'll make a motion to approve these waivers.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Or Kelly. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Tim, I didn't hear you vote.
Yeah, I'm going to abstain.
You're going to abstain?
Yeah.
All right, and I will reluctantly vote in favor of it. I have great concern about the width of the street, and I'd be interested to see what the fire marshal has to say about the turning radius. I think that it is a tricky way that you've, and it may be very successful, and hats off to you if it is. I do think it is unreasonable to expect that people will use the library parking lot. I think what will happen is it will spill across Kings Highway into DeVries Circle. So it's not conceivable that people will walk the distance from the library to this development, even though there's a trail. But I will vote in favor of it. So the motion carries 4 with 1 abstention.
Yeah, I'd like to say I have a concern too, but I can't imagine harming that tree. And if that 28 is going to have any bearing at all on that tree, I'm going to have to just hope that everything works out.
Okay, well, let's move on then.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good
Thank you
evening.
very much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on then is a possible discussion and possible action on a request from Rick Will for the city to pave Alaska Avenue. And Mr. Quill, I think, is on the line. Is that correct?
We've got Charlie O'Donnell unmuted because
Okay.
the way we had left it.
That's fine.
So
Charlie, you want to talk to us about this?
Rick has his hand up. So do you want to go to Rick first or Charlie first?
Let's go to Rick first. Okay.
Hello?
Yes, we got you, Rick.
Okay. Well, thank you for considering this tonight. First of all, I'm feeling like a little bit like Michael Bublé, and I'm feeling good. And I just want to say congratulations to the 2 new council members. And I also want to express my appreciation for the outgoing council members, Rob and Bonnie, for although we were at odds on items, the one thing I've never diminished is the amount of time and effort and devotion they've contributed to this town. It was much appreciated. So, and I just want to make one other comment for Tim Richard about the when he brought up maybe a friendly amendment to the other ordinances. That if I'm involved in this project on the corner that I'm involved at a 203 Savannah, I would certainly work within the wishes of everyone. I think we're all concerned about the issues before us in the swap ordinance and in the rising sea level. And if I am involved, I will make a commitment to use porous surfaces. I think it's a fair and equitable idea. And so we're at the hand now with this Alaska Avenue, and I would just like to say that you know, although we can't change the past, I hope going forward we can work together on this. And I believe if you read my packet, I believe at the last meeting there was concerns with what Del Dot wanted. I think your engineer is going to address and whatever issues may be presented. But you know, throughout this process, I've reading the comp plan and the and our important portion of that, you know, specifically talks about incentivizing business owners or business property owners in this side of town. And my ask is, I don't think it's a big ask to ask the city to contribute to about 40 feet of improvement off Alaska Avenue, considering the Del Dot really, in my conversations with them, and I believe would be verified through reports from Del Dot back to the city, that if the improvement on these properties possibly go through, they would prefer it to go through Alaska Avenue. So, you know, I'm curious what the discussion is going to be. And the only thing I ever ask for in any of my, when I get a little angry or anxious, I just want this council and this town is to respect private property owners within the confines of, you know, societal pact, the marketplace, the comp plan, and the code. You know, and I believe if everybody could reach out, if there are issues that are sticking points, so we could all reach out in a concerted manner to resolve them instead of being left out into the world of uncertainties. So I'm asking tonight to consider this, and I appreciate the effort and time you guys will devote to it tonight. Thank you.
Okay, Charlie, let's go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So we were asked to look into the feasibility of creating a road, a paved road within the Alaska Avenue, Paper Street right away. And, you know, some of the things, can you see my screen, I hope, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I gave council a couple options, but they're both based on the same layout. And I'll talk about what's slightly different about each. But you know, there were some things that we needed to get into. First and foremost is you can see the wetlands that are shaded here. And we figured that there were some wetlands, but when we, you know, actually dug into this is what we're getting into in terms of wetlands. There's also the proximity of the Alaska Avenue right away with the Savannah Road, Cape and Lopin Drive intersection, which is something that we'll, you know, have to address with Del Dot, and I'll speak to that in a moment. And then along with the wetlands and, you know, our desire to try to go with some sort of permeable paved surface, porous asphalt. We wanted to know what the underlying soil conditions would be. And most importantly, you know, I suspected that the groundwater level would be fairly high in this area, given the wetlands. And then as you go back towards American Legion Road, there's more and more wetlands down in that area. To summarize, we feel like we can get a paved surface in there at 24 feet wide, which, you know, I heard your discussion about 24 feet on the last agenda item. What I've got shown here is a 24-foot wide road, which is the city's minimum. And it does get into the wetlands, but the way that we've designed it, it's less than 0.1 acre of disturbance of those wetlands, which is an important number to keep in mind, because if it is less than 0.1 acres of wetlands disturbance, no wetland mitigation is required. And it also simplifies the application process through the Corps of Engineers, requiring just a general nationwide permit. So it's important to, if we were to move forward with this, to keep that disturbance of those existing wetlands below 0.1 acres. Like I said, it's a 24-foot wide road that we've shown with the T turnaround, similar to what we talked about on the last project. This meets the city standard for getting, you know, trash trucks and emergency vehicles being able to 3-point turn and get back out to Cape and Lopin Drive. This particular, this EX1, this concept here shows a swale slope slightly in this direction. Again, it would be a gentle swale, not very deep at all. Flat bottom swale, maybe we can start using that. And it would take the runoff from the road beyond the T turnaround and into the wetlands that exist behind at the very end of the road. We did get 2 soil borings taken. You can see those right here, SB1 and SB2.
Right.
And, what they discovered was that there are moist, sandy soils. Moist being an important word in the description from the geotechnical scientist. But most importantly, what we discovered at both of these soil borings, and this was just a week and a half ago, was that the groundwater level was at 18 to 20 inches deep, which is really high groundwater level, and it's not even the seasonal high groundwater, which we see in January and February of each year. So what that means is, with those groundwater levels so high, is that a porous or a permeable paving system will not function 100% like what we see on Bayview Avenue, for example. That works really, really well because the groundwater level is well below the surface of Bayview Avenue. Here, the groundwater level is going to be right up against the underlying stone section of a porous asphalt or a permeable paving paver section, street section. Now, with that in mind, you could still move forward with a porous asphalt paved system. It will work some, but it won't work like it does over at Bayview Avenue. So it's important to keep that in mind. And what
So
we've
Charlie, excuse me for interrupting. Are you saying in effect that because the water table is as high as it is, that the water would be coming up through the porous material onto the top of the surface of the roadway?
No, what I'm saying is that when you design a porous asphalt system, you have to have 2 feet from below the bottom of the stone underneath the road to the
Right.
high groundwater level. And what I'm saying here is that the seasonal, not even the seasonal, the groundwater level as of last week was less than 2 feet from the surface.
Mhm.
And if you
I
recall,
understand.
on Bayview Avenue, we have a section that's 16 inches thick between the porous asphalt and the underlying storage of stone storage area.
Right.
So it's not perfect conditions for a porous asphalt road or any permeable paver road.
Right.
That said, we do it. We do, the way we're looking at it now is we have the road sloped towards this swale that I have shown right here, which would
Yeah.
take the drainage back to the wetlands, to the rear of the property, to the rear of the paper street right away.
What would keep, Charlie, that swale during a storm event when the water is coming from the wetlands towards Cape Penelope Drive? What would keep the water from coming up through that same flat bottom swale?
Well, it would all depend on how whatever the intensity of the storm is and how it functions on the groundwater level. A storm event isn't going to raise the groundwater level per se immediately.
Right.
That happens over time. That said, there are wetlands here. It probably does get wet at times. But you could put a road in here that gets wet when there's a flooding event, a storm surge event, or some really, really intense rainstorm.
Mhm.
So a couple things to keep in mind. Due to its proximity to the intersection at Savannah and Cape Penelope Drive, if we were to move forward, this would require what DELDOT calls an essential safety permit. We've talked to them just to make sure that it's got enough distance here. We don't see a problem with that based on our initial discussions, but it would require a permit process. Also, the way we have it designed, it has 7,000 square feet of disturbance, the entire street and swale area, which is beyond the Sussex Conservation District's limit of 5,000 square foot, which if your disturbance is less than that, you are exempt from the permit process. In this case, we'd have to go through the permit process, perhaps. My idea would be to bring Jessica Watson from Sussex Conservation District out on the site, explain to her what it is that we're doing, show her the existing conditions, because we all know that there's a lot of stone and hard pan out there right now. So though we've got 7,000 square feet of disturbed area, we're not really increasing the impervious area by the total area of the road I have shown here, if that makes sense, because there's existing hard pan and stone underneath. So I just
Question I think was raised last time. Are you able to determine, is that as a result of having once been a paved street there?
Yeah, I don't think that it's ever been a paved street, Andrew, from our research. We've never seen that. It's just driveway access to these two parcels.
I think it's multiple years of putting down clamshell or stone that have been
Yes,
acted and have created a hard pan.
yes. Now, I know Mr. Quill's on the line. The way that I have it shown right now, we've got this, shallow swale right here. If this corner parcel were to develop, however we access that parcel onto this proposed Alaska Avenue, would have to consider, maintaining the flow of this swale through however we access that. I think that can be worked out if it ever were to occur, but I just wanted to bring that up. I did talk to the Board of Public Works. There's 8-inch sewer gravity that comes from the entrance into beach parking lot number 2, Georgia Avenue, runs through several manholes. There's a manhole right out here in Cape Henlopen Drive, and then turns and meanders its way through these wetlands over to pump station number 8 on American Legion Road. If the city were to move forward with this project, the board may or may not want to replace that existing sewer. It's old, but it's very functional and there hasn't been any problems, but that was something that they would want to look at if the project were to move forward. Right now, there's a 4-inch water main pretty much along this property line right here. Again, that might be something that the board would want to upgrade to 6 or 8-inch and put it underneath the road, or somewhere, maybe not underneath the road, but somewhere along in this right of way. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention as well.
Charlie, has that sewer line been scoped at all?
No, it hasn't. I will tell you this though, interestingly enough, it's probably from the 50s. And it's got a really good slope for an 8-inch pipe. Most 8-inch slope pipe is put in at 0.28% slope. This all the way out the beach parking lot 2, all the way to lift station 8 has 0.4% slope. So it's got a really good slope, which I like. That gets a lot of good velocity through there to scour the bottom of that pipe. So Ted, along those lines, we haven't scoped it, but because the velocity is higher through that pipe, it's got a less of a chance of it being clogged up. The board hasn't had any calls or problems with it.
So do we know if it's cast iron or terracotta?
Yeah, it's a terracotta pipe. It's old from the 50s.
So if we were going to do anything here, it would be, given terracotta and its brittleness, would seem logical that we would want to consider very seriously replacing it.
Yeah, that would be something that the board would want to look at.
Rick, do you have a question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yeah, well, thank you, Charlie. One of my, and thank you for, it's a lot of work you've done on behalf of me and my 2 neighbors. In my analysis, and I'm just a layperson, I was only my ask was for about 40 feet up, where the wetland starts, Charlie, and the rest of the panel in that area was to pave that. But I understood also that obviously this back lot here couldn't be left, without an access. So if I would make a comment is, do you need to have that pavement coming all the way up past it, or can you just give access like to the corner where you can have an access in? So that will further reduce the porous pavement and the least amount of disturbance or impact on the rest of Alaska Avenue. And I don't know, but yes, exactly. Like in the corner, you hit the first house, you hit our lot, but the second house behind the first house, I don't know if you need to come all the way up past it. That's just my opinion.
I mean,
But you're almost like a reverse pipe driveway, almost.
yeah, we just got to make sure we have the T turnaround in here somehow.
Well, could you put the T-turn up further or no?
Perhaps, I'd have to look at that. I don't particularly like having the T turnaround as part of a driveway. So if I were to move this to here, I don't like that. I don't even think I'm allowed to do that.
Okay, I didn't know the logistics. But yeah, okay. Well, I just wanted to. Yeah, my ask was for 40 feet of it, but you guys have certainly included the whole the look at the whole picture, and I understand that.
Yeah, we would definitely want to serve this driveway as well. And then
Mr. Quill, can I ask you a question? Are the Santucci's and the Cucci's, that they are also supportive of this action?
I got to be honest with you, I never met the back house one. I don't even know who they are. I've never seen them down there, and I've been down, a number of times, obviously, on this site. I can tell you on the house on Cape Penelope, and I met the young lady, and I believe she's either from Milford or Milton. And I had expressed, and I'm going back, oh gosh, when I got back from Boston, maybe in the, I got back in August or sometime in that time frame. I was over there and I saw activity over there, introduced myself, and I told her that the possibility of, asking for the improvement of the Alaska Avenue. And she didn't have any response. She wasn't objective or, didn't object it or support it. She was just, oh, okay, thank you. And I said, well, if you have any concerns, hopefully I expect everybody to be notified. But I haven't, other than that one encounter.
All right.
The one owner.
And are there just a total of 2 homes or residents there, or is there there's not a third property, is there that's not shown on this map?
No.
Can I answer a question? Can I answer one more question?
Sure.
Yeah, you know what? I'm sorry, Charlie. You're right. So, and Tim, you're right. So the house you see, there is an outbuilding that I guess we can't see. So now I see what you did, Charlie, to give it all tow access. That is only deeded as one lot at this point. I think it's like 100 by 100. So technically, though, and this is something I do not know. I would imagine a part of that property sits on wetlands. And I would venture to say, I don't know that if they ever did something in the future to develop that, if they said subdivide that property into 2 lots under the R3, I don't think they would be able to do it because that other lot would probably sit in wetlands. But I'm not a government official. I can't determine that.
Okay, I think we need to get back to the Alaska Avenue question. We can't address all those issues here tonight.
Right.
No, but it leads us to recognize that we really need some kind of overall plan, Rick, so that we can work on this. I mean, we can't say one way or the other at this point, but if you could just come up with a plan on exactly what it is you want to do, it would certainly help us make a decision.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it was not to put the cart in front of the horse.
Yeah.
It's just to see if the town, this process was to see if the town was willing to work with us, and if it's me developing this, or if the lot gets sold,
just give us something. Give us something to work with.
Absolutely.
Plan. We need to have something in front. I don't do good unless I have something in front of me, Rick.
I got you. Absolutely.
I think Carolyn's absolutely right. You would be the primary user of the street, or your project.
Yes.
User of the street. So we had a better idea of what you were going to be doing there. It would, a 24-foot street might not work for a commercial development.
Well, can I just say one other thing is, and
Sure.
Technically, and this is the and it's not a conundrum, it's just the facts of deeded lots. There are 2 deeded lots here, lot 189 that straddles Alaska Avenue and lot 190.
Right.
I can't be denied, and I don't know the legal, maybe Mr. Mandelis can address that. If Alaska Avenue was off the table for whatever reason, I would have to, by law, I believe, have to be granted access to either property through the state road, either one on Cape Penelope or one on Savannah. What I'm getting at is, as it sits right now, and if Alaska Avenue was not even on the table, off the board, I would have to be granted an access to lot 189 and an access to lot 190. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, but again, you're putting the cart before the horse, so you got to give us something to work with.
Well, no, I know that. Or I know that, Kyle. I'm not trying. I'm just telling you that technically what we're trying to do is work within the confines of, and Charlie spoke with DelDOT. DelDOT's preference was to get it as far, any entrance or whatever, if these lots are developed, away from the corners, the corner of Cape Penelope and Savannah.
Right.
And
I hear you.
And you gain a little bit by it being inside the cities right away rather than a private development. And it's further down from the intersection as well.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Now, one thing to keep in mind is if this property were developed, Rick, that DelDOT still might want you to do something at this intersection, like provide sidewalk, et cetera, or an easement like they sometimes do. So keep that in the back of your mind.
I understand, Charlie. We had discussion with him, but again, I think Carol and Ted said it right. Until we put a plan in play, that's when the things get determined.
Right, exactly.
Show us a plan.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the parcels 189 and 190 are in the process of seeking rezoning.
they already have been rezoned back to.
They've been rezoned.
Okay, so they've been rezoned. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, panel.
thanks, Rick.
So I don't think
Thanks,
we're going to take any action on this tonight. Rick, you've heard
No.
the question.
I understand.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mayor, may I add one other thing, not specifically related to Alaska Avenue, but something that we found out about while researching the work?
Please.
Is that DelDOT has got a study ongoing right now to address the flooding that occurs along in front of Dairy Queen, et cetera. You may be aware.
Oh, good.
That is
So,
needed, absolutely.
I don't know. I don't know what a good solution is, but they've got a study going, so we'll see what ideas they come up with.
Yeah, well, that floods all the way from the corner up past the second or third lot.
Yeah, and that came, Amory, that came through Matt Schlitter. He told us that, FYI. Yeah.
Right.
Do you have any idea, Charlie, how soon they will have their proposals out?
Well, they're studying it, so it's,
And, well, okay, do you have any
Yeah, I
idea
don't-
how long their study period is? Do they give themselves?
no, I don't. I really don't. And I don't have any idea what they might come up with either. I don't want.
Sure. I understand.
There is no in-ground stormwater management system there, so that whatever they come up with is going to have to be something.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Good.
All right, so
Thank
there's
you.
no action to be taken with that. And Anne Marie, I apologize. We skipped over your city manager's report as we got into.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine.
We read it.
Give us a brief synopsis on that. I know you submitted, you gave it out this afternoon.
I mean, let me see. I don't even have it up. We've got the Coleman Avenue 4th Street project is wrapping up finally. That was supposed to be done before now, and yet it's not.
Wow. It's
Rick,
You're not on mute.
Oh,
Rick, thank you.
There you go.
sorry about that. My bad.
Hey,
So that construction project is getting ready to wrap up. The Pilottown Road water main replacement is paused for the season, and the road has been restored. We're, I guess, waiting. I'm looking at Charlie, waiting on the contract documents to move forward for the tennis and pickleball courts. We're working on the some value engineering as it relates to the Margaret H. Rollins Community Center meeting room restrooms. We had an election. I think everybody knows that. We did. Janet Reeves, Darren Gordon, Charlie, and I did walk Blockhouse Pond with Harry Kaiser and Ed Toussaint about the just to look at the scouring of the banks and some of the, you know, I guess the erosion that we're seeing there, and we're talking about things that we can do, you know, probably looking to do maybe a grant project with DENREC or something to take care of that. We were approved by the Water Infrastructure Advisory Council for a $1.5 million state revolving loan fund application. So we'll be working on the documents for that. As a matter of fact, you will see that at the next council meeting. We will be looking at the documents we need to be able to close for that. So that's kind of a highlight.
And I just, neither you nor I mentioned the fact that the M&T lot, which we are going to
Oh,
reposition,
right.
repurpose into city parking, additional downtown parking, was seal coated over the weekend and hopefully will be up and operational very soon. So thank you very much.
I have a question I'd like to ask you, Anne Marie. I have not been on 3rd Street in the last several days. That area is going to be marked for parking as well, is it not?
That has been done.
Oh, that was completed now?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
That was done
I
about
haven't been through that area.
And it's only going to be
Okay.
on one side of the street, right, Anne Marie?
Correct. Correct.
But the other
And
side,
it was also marked on Park Street, correct? Anne Marie, also on the park?
Yes.
Thank you.
but you're not marking the other side of 3rd Street. That's perfectly okay to park over there, right?
Yes.
Yes, we're just
Yes.
not marking it.
Okay, because my neighbors had said to me, they heard that there were going to be signs put up that was no parking, and that didn't make sense to me, considering that they're right there at Historic Society. You're going to need that other side of the street. So I'm glad to know that's not true.
Well, 3rd Street does widen when it gets to Park Avenue.
Yeah.
Right.
It has
Okay.
that narrow section between Market and Park, which is very narrow, and then it widens that.
Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
Yep, and we did launch a page on our website that has an interactive map for parking and gives details about all the different parking areas and how long you can park there and whether it's free or if there's a charge for it. So we have tried to get that information out as well.
Okay,
Thank you.
so I think we are now ready to move on to new business. And the first item, J1, is presentation and possible on action recommendation from the Board of Health regarding the city's ordinance requiring mask be worn in certain downtown public areas in Lewis. I think we did this last July when we required face masks be worn in the Beach 1 and 2 parking lots and also in the entire downtown business district. And based on the current CDC guidelines and the governor's rescinding of outdoor face mask wearing that goes into effect on Friday, we are in a position where our ordinances will then be more restrictive than what is being recommended either by the governor or the state or by CDC. Fortunately, as I mentioned earlier in my comments, Lewis and the 19958 zip code has a very high vaccination rate, and our folks have been very diligent about wearing masks, but we do see a tremendous amount of mask fatigue. So I think it is time to reevaluate where we want to go with this. I think by all indications, this seems to be clearing, and I think also all the CDC is saying that the transmission seems to be more of an indoor event than an outdoor event. And so I think we could possibly consider rescinding this mask ordinance for outdoors. Any comments from the table?
Ted, I would also add that in last Thursday's Board of Health meeting that Chair Dr. Paul Cowan also raised this question and seemed very supportive of lifting the mask mandate, citing the governor as well as CDC, as well as what you just mentioned, the very low rates of infection in Sussex County and the very high rates of vaccination.
Thank you, Cliff.
I would also remind that, as the mayor pointed out earlier, people would still have the option to wear a mask.
Yep.
anyone who is uncomfortable can wear a mask for whatever reason. In many cases, I think
So what
Dr.
so
Cameron,
this proposal would be us,
go ahead.
it would be removing the restrictions that we currently have in place in the business district area, correct?
District at Beach 1 and 2.
Removing those. Right, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right, is there a motion to move on this?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to rescind the mask ordinance requiring masks in the business district and Beach 1, Beach 2 with immediate effect.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? Carolyn, thank you very much.
Mhm.
Mayor, may I just ask, because I'm not sure what all is in our current order. I think there might be a couple other things in there. Your motion is that everything that's in our order is lifted such that the city of Lewis will be consistent with the governor's 28th modification.
Correct.
Okay.
A statewide modification order.
Right.
Any further discussion? Thank you, Glenn, for that clarification. Anything further? All those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Great, motion carries. Moving then on to item J2 is presentation of possible action on whether the city of Lewis should host the Go Forth fireworks on July 4th. The Go Forth Fireworks Committee has been meeting and they met as recently as Friday and to discuss this based on information and that has been put out by the state regarding fireworks in the area and throughout the state. We would need to file a permit, an event application with DPH in order to host this. However, we are aware that Rehoboth is in the process and they have approved going forth with their fireworks on July 3rd. And we are also aware that Newark is going ahead with their fireworks. I believe Millsboro is as well. So there is a tremendous amount of interest in doing that. We had a conversation regarding the guidelines that were put out by the governor's office for fireworks specifically. And we feel that we can successfully address all the items and the requirements that were put out by the governor's office concerning how you would deal with crowd control, notification should there be a contact and contact tracing and hand sanitation stations at all of the restroom facilities. So we feel as though the Fireworks Committee felt as though they could address those concerns and move with the idea of going forward to make an application to the Department of Public Health. Chief Spell's on the line. You want to comment further? Chief Spell? From the police perspective, your points of view about the fireworks?
Try to find that mute button.
You're muted. You gotta find it.
There it is.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with everything you said, Mayor, based on the committee's recommendations. My Sussex County special events permit is still on file with them. I've talked with them and everybody's on board. You know, there's some logistics that are going to have to be expedited here, but we can get that done. EMS is on board. I got to reach out to the fire department, obviously, after this meeting if it is approved. But yeah, you know, I think we're ready to do it.
Good. Chief, you and I haven't had a chance to talk. I did have a chance to speak with Dale McGee today, and he was very supportive of the idea and was aware that we were going forth. He initially had heard that we and Rehoboth were ready to do it on the same night, and I assured him that they were on 2 separate nights, and he said that he felt he could work with those dates. So, is there any further discussion?
I just have a quick question for the chief. Chief, I know 2 years ago, you and your department did a terrific job with crowd control, traffic control. Do you anticipate at this point in time executing the same plan that you used 2 years ago?
I do. I forgot to mention that I have spoken with DelDOT and they are on board as well. We talked about, they did a great job helping us manage the traffic and the parking. And as it stands right now, I think we're going to use the same plan. There might be some small modifications, but all in all, the same plan.
Okay, Thank you.
I would remind people that, remind everyone that if we go forward with this, we have worked with the purveyor of fireworks to ensure that they would do fireworks that would fire at a higher level or would explode at a higher level, so that there are many places to watch fireworks safely without having to go to the beach where there'll be larger crowds. And again, this is an event where someone who had some concern may want to wear a mask if they were going to go and be part of the crowd.
Right.
Is there a target date then? What's the?
We have the firework, the Go Forth Committee has always committed to doing it on the 4th. So we would do it on Sunday, the 4th. Rehoboth has normally done it on the Saturday prior to the 4th of July.
And I guess we can assume or should assume that if the trends reverse themselves and we saw a third or fourth wave, I've lost count of the waves we've had, that the whole thing could be canceled at the, anytime between now and the 4th, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay. I would remind you that this event is totally funded by private donation. And the community has really gotten behind this event. I think it will be a tremendous positive thing for the community to have fireworks on the 4th as we had in 2019. So,
yeah.
Motion to approve fireworks going forward.
I make a motion that we approve.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Carolyn. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Khalil. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Great. So for the 35 people who are still on, there will be fireworks on July 4th. Lewis, and again, as we have always done in the past, it will be on a barge off of Beach 1. Fully, as we have 1.5 miles of shoreline, fully viewable, fully visible from the entire crescent, as well as many other places on this side of the canal. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, moving then on to item J3 is presentation possible action on a request for a license to place stone on a paper street adjacent to number 18 Cape Penelope Drive. We have a letter from the homeowner regarding his placement of stone on the paper street next to his home. We need to consider whether or not that stone should remain there. And
So Mayor, the homeowner is on
I see
the call. Do you want me to?
sure,
unmute him?
bring him on to, yep, Mr. Von Lindenberg. Good evening. Thank you for being with us.
I apologize that the meeting is going so long, and just grateful for everyone's support. So Mayor, City Council, new members, welcome, congratulations, and specifically, Emery, I just want to say thank you for your kindness to get us into the mix, and hopefully I just kind of keep it short and sweet. We built a home. We've been here for a number of years. We built the home, and as a byproduct of all the construction work that was done, it disturbed a lot of the soil in what's considered the alley or the paper street beside our home. We have, if you look at the zoning map, we're one of the very narrow alleyways, and our home maintains a rear garage. And we quickly found out that we had a challenge being able to access it. And unfortunately, I guess I looked around and I noticed some other homes and admittedly did not seek permission in advance, but sought to try and stabilize the soil and prevent some further problems and erosion. And a byproduct of which is, I think we overstepped a boundary in a couple ways. And I humbly apologize and ready and willing to rectify it, but seeking some approval so that we might continue to enjoy access to the rear of our home. So I've got a number of different supporting items that I could share, but would really just prefer, if you've looked at the information, would prefer to field any questions in the sake of time.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, you've had a chance to read Mr. Von Lindenberg's letter, and I think you've seen the photographs that were provided regarding this. Is there any discussion at the table?
I have a question.
Leo?
In terms of the extension out to the right of way or the city property, how many inches, feet are we talking about?
It's a good question. I actually didn't measure it off. So the city maintains a lot. The home that we have, we're on a 50 wide by 100 deep lot. And there are 2 lots that border this alley, paper street, if you will. And those lots are turned the other way. So they are 100 wide and 50 deep. And the one lot is relatively unbuildable. It's wet and it's a city-owned lot. And I have some perhaps slightly better pictures. I'm not sure if it's permitted for me to screen share, but I took some additional photography and I did already do some pulling back of the stone, and I pulled it back about 5 feet from the edge because it had sort of flared out so that we could make the turn into our garage. I've already pulled it back a bit. I'm happy to do whatever is necessary, but forgive me, Mr. Kleba, I'm not exactly sure what the measurement is.
Anne Marie, do we know, does Charlie or anybody, are they aware of?
So I've unmuted Robin. So Robin might know. Hopefully he knows. Robin, do you know?
No, I do not.
Okay.
Sorry.
You can share your screen if you want to. You should be able to share.
These are pictures that you actually shared with us.
I took some additional ones that might also help better illustrate. I guess when I submitted my letter, I was ill prepared to know the gravity of how far exactly it was going. So forgive me, I should have and could have done more legwork in advance. But with your blessing, I'll go ahead and try and navigate here.
Okay.
And while he's doing that, Mayor and Emery, I do have a survey of his property. The property is 100 foot deep. So when I was out there the other day, he stopped it basically at the back part of his house, which is approximately 15.5 feet off the rear property line.
So you're telling me the stone goes back 85 feet?
Yeah.
Probably roughly.
That would sound about right. To the picture that's shown with this tractor trailer, part of our challenge, and you can see this was a very dry day. My concern, and I apologize for this, is that I had this stone sort of splayed out here, and this is the city lot. And even on a dry day, you can actually see where this is very, very, very soft soil, very easy to get stuck. And we on occasion get deliveries, and we have a garage entry that's right back here to the back of this lift gate. And it makes it really tough to be able to access that home. And that was something that was planned in our build with the help of city zoning and permitting and our designer that we spent a number of years working with. I have a few other photos that might lend additional help. Bear with me here. This is a photo that was taken this afternoon. This is where I have already pulled the stone back, but there's sitting water that sits here on the city-owned lot. And you can see the tire tracks trying to get out of our rear garage here. It makes it quite tough, but I've already pulled stone back, and I've pulled it back all along this edge here, trying not to encroach so far. And, we were having quite an erosion problem all up throughout this edge. And again, my efforts were meant to remediate, not to cause a problem. So for that, I apologize that we're taking time.
So you've basically taken the stone away from the city property line?
I've tried to pull it back. Yes, ma'am. Pardon me. I've tried to pull it back here. And now you can see tire tracks from vehicles. I try to get out of this garage to exit the property.
I see.
It looks as though you must have put a sand bed down first.
So I actually put CR6 on the advice of the materials company. And I did not want to ever pave this. I wanted to try and keep it as natural as possible. And I would love for there to be some plantings, if the city would permit, would love to put some plantings on your behalf, not as a formal garden, but to help add some rigidity to the soil and maybe help with some of that softness. Really, guys, I'm an open book, happy to help anything that you guys would support and not asking for any contribution. I'll put the time, labor, and money into it. If
how much of the city's property is still covered?
I can't answer that. If I had to guess, maybe a foot or two right here that I can rake some more back, but it gets real
Uh-huh.
soft.
Oh, so we're not talking about a whole lot of area here.
I
What
don't
depth
believe.
is the CR6? How many inches?
That's a really good question. Tim, I believe that was you asking.
Yes.
I believe it's about 3 inches thick of CR6. And then I believe I've got a 3-inch stone base on top. I'd have to look at our invoice, but I followed their instructions at Stokely Materials to a T.
Mhm.
How many
And
tons of
was
stone
this
is that?
driveway? I'm sorry.
I
Um,
just,
What
I
kind of
think
stone?
it's 10. It might be 10 or 12 tons of stone. May even be 15. It was quite a bit.
Yeah.
And talk to us about the stone. Is it clean stone? Does it have fines in it? What is it?
What is
It's
it?
a, gosh, I apologize. I'm going to call it a decorative stone. It's a river rock type stone that has multicolor variation. We want it to look aesthetically pleasing. It's actually what matches under our house driveway in the front. I got it to match that, so it looked consistent and was pleasing to the eye. So here it's a little dusty and dirty, but once it washes clean, it's very beautiful.
It looks to me as though this this flares out, even though you've raked it back, it still flares out to be quite wide here, probably in the 20-foot range. I don't have, obviously you don't have measurements, but it looks as though you've covered a pretty wide area of that paper street, so that you can get trucks back there, et cetera.
So, Mayor, I believe we've got off the side of the house here by the American flag, we have, I believe, an 8-foot buffer on the side of the house to the property line. And then if I'm not mistaken, I believe the paper street it's either 8 or 10, maybe Mr. Davis would know for sure. And what you're seeing here on the edge, this is, unfortunately, this is dirt because there was nothing, this was all damaged by construction equipment that various contractors had used the paper street for staging of materials for the build of our house. And that's what ultimately disrupted all this. And it was causing a real big drainage challenge and problem for our neighbor here and also for the city's lot. And the stone and the CR6 has done a really nice job of preventing the runoff, the streams, if you will, even from the roadway. It's helped mitigate quite a bit, but still allowing it to absorb more slowly into the soil. But if you'd like me to measure that, I'd be happy to do so and pull it back as necessary.
I have a question for you. During your permitting process, when you were in front of the building office and with your building plans and getting those approved, was there any discussion about the use of the city property as a staging area for your construction? And if there was, or even if it wasn't, was there any, was the issue of restoration of city property ever raised with you?
Tim, that's a really good question. To be direct, I didn't have really any involvement in going before the city with the permitting. That was all done with our builder. And there were multiple attempts. They were unfortunately even using our neighbor's property a little bit for some staging at times, which again, I think various contractors were having materials dumped there because it was accessible. I have an image that was an old image that I can sort of zoom in. This is before our home was constructed, right off of Google Maps. And you could see the 2 tire marks that were coming in. And this whole area here just was disrupted from their lift equipment and other things. And yeah, so I was trying to mitigate all that we could there.
Mr. Van Lindenberg, I noticed in one of the photographs you provided that we have, it looks as though that 8-foot setback from the side of the house, you have filled with sand and stone and shrubbery already. So all of the stone that you have placed there is in the city's right of way, correct?
Right.
Well, this is in this photo that you can see here on my computer, this is the access to the rear drive is in between these 2 stones. So this stone here is, and this segment to the side is what I've already pulled back.
Right.
But I'm happy to pull back as necessary to match, but was seeking approval to not have to remove all of it because I think that would cause more problems.
Charlie, what do you know about the CR6 that he was describing in terms of permeability? You're muted, Charlie.
So CR6 is typically 57 stone, similar to 57 stones. Usually has fines in it unless it gets washed out before it comes on site. So it doesn't have much permeability because the fines will lock it up. And for that reason, it provides an excellent base for roads. That's why we use it on roads. But I don't know whether this was cleaned and washed 56 or exactly what was used.
Yeah, I wish I could give you an answer. I'm not 100% sure what Stokely had on hand.
Right, but the CR6 is the base, and then on top of that was the river rock kind of stone that you installed, correct?
Yes, that's what you see pictured here. That's correct.
Right. Yeah. Charlie, what do you know about the effect of, what really concerns me is the water runoff, the drainage from this site to the home, that lot that you see to the west. I think that would be considered the west.
Over
Yeah,
here?
that moving in that direction. You know, from this area. This driveway was not engineered in any way. So as far as I know, it's just a surface that
Correct.
you've now described would be semi-impervious, correct?
Well, I don't know the answer to your question.
I directed that to Charlie, the city engineer.
I mean, this is the first I'm seeing it. If it's 57 stone that has fines in it, then this is probably not very pervious at all. In
Right.
terms of the drainage, I don't know. I never studied this particular spot, Tim. I know that the wetlands come up to the rear of the property, but you know, that's a little distant to where we're looking at right here.
Yes, behind us from what we're looking at here, right?
Correct.
Yes.
If it helps, in this photo, you can actually see runoff from the street that still happens on this corner here. And you can see where that comes in, but that's from water up here that the grade of the grass is up above the streetway. And so it's one of the few spots that the street is able to drain, and it follows right along this edge here. And we were having a challenge where this whole area was getting rutted out and was having erosion from really this whole area, which is why I tried using materials that allowed the water to come in and through. And we no longer have the streams running across the property or anything like that.
But my concern is that, you know, where is that water going? Because the water didn't stop running off the street since you put in the stone. The water continues to run. It's now flooding somewhere else or accumulating somewhere else. That would be my concern. I also have concern that this is, you know, a paper street that was undeveloped, and it looks as though although there was a travel lane that apparently someone perhaps drove back to the back of the lot on, it was pretty well grassed before or covered in grass before your construction people used it as a laydown area. So in some ways, the penetration or the accumulation of water was created by your using it as a laydown area, and probably
not restored
because it was done during the winter when it was very wet in February. Some of this accumulation of water may be the result of what was done by your contractor or the delivery people that were bringing materials to your site.
Mm-hmm.
I also have some concerns about, given the fact that we are looking at recharge areas and sea level rise, the permeability of this stone, and because that paper street was undeveloped. And now we don't know what the permeability of this stone surface is. And so I have concerns about it remaining there.
So one of the challenges that I uncovered afterwards was a reference here. I'm not sure that this is the right code because this isn't my forte, but I guess DelDOT has a reference with regard to paper streets, which I think this is what it was, but it references having pavement that's a hot mix over all this stone and aggregate base. And I'm not sure that this is applicable here, but failing to have some sort of solid material to allow us access to the rear of our home presents a big challenge, and that was part of its design that was approved. So I'm trying to figure out how we can work through that. And it would seem that what work we've tried to do would be a more pleasing, I think, than what might be recommended in this case, which is why we're trying to seek a special approval or variance, if that makes sense.
Well, I think one of the things I would read back into section A is that it say may be determined that if there are no other buildable lots fronting on the paper street, there are, you know, right now, there are no other buildable lots that are fronting on that paper street.
This is also, that's a DELDOT,
And that's not the city
Right.
code.
right?
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the only other, these are the other two lots that run this way. This is, I believe, 16, and then this is the city's lot
Right.
that is oftentimes saturated and wet with standing water.
So those are my concerns about, I think we need, if we were to consider leaving the stone there, I think we would need to know a whole lot more about the permeability. But given where we are with sea level rise and the recharge area, I have some concerns about where we are, where we might be going with this, or the precedent we might be setting. We've talked about encroachments a lot, and unfortunately, this is an encroachment onto a city paper street.
Yeah. Yeah.
Carolyn, you have something you want to say?
No, I was just saying if it had been the right stone, we may have had something to work with, but not knowing what that is a real issue. He's only trying to protect his land. I understand that. Had it been a different kind of stone, I think we wouldn't be having this
Is it the
issue.
stone or is it the substrate, the CR6 that we use to try and use as a base beneath it? That's what I'm reading and trying to follow with you, because the stone is the same stone that was used and was approved by the city for the front of our home, for our front access under our carport, not our garage, but our carport. And that was approved and was signed off on by the city. And I'm wondering how this differs in that regard.
Well, you're using that on your lot, and that would have not, your house would have already covered that. So that was your choice as to what you used as your parking area under your home.
So no, it's in front. So it actually serves as the connection of under our home to the street.
Right.
And so it does have permeability to it, and is what was put on at the time that the build was done.
I'm not sure I'm following how that weighs into putting the same with the CR6 substrate, how that weighs into what was done on the city land.
Understood.
I would note that one thing that I've asked GMB to work with us on is developing, an empirical standard for what we consider pervious. As you recall, we've had a number of conversations where the idea of clamshells has come up, and in the past, we've considered that to be pervious. And I think stone is another thing where we've considered it to be pervious from the building officials' perspective. But as we're learning more, I think we've determined that we really need GMB to work with us to develop a measure of how we can actually make sure that when we say that something's pervious, that it is in fact pervious, because I'm not convinced that that's been the case.
I also learned from Sussex County Conservation District that they don't consider clamshell to be pervious after it's down for a while. They
Right.
Right.
And that would be the same with the number of stone surfaces as well.
Yeah.
This is next to North Carolina, right?
I'm not sure.
The
No,
paper
no,
street.
North Carolina is like towards Georgia Avenue from where we're talking. It's on
Right.
the other side of those two houses.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I'm looking for, because I know we had a wetland survey done of that area. And I'm wondering, I'm wondering if the wetlands actually encroach into that area at all.
I was trying to zoom in. This is the paper street that we're talking about on the zoning map.
Right.
And
And Mr. Von Lindenberg, what is the, or maybe Charlie can answer this question. What is the width of our paper street? Is it a 50-foot right of way?
I think it's
That's-
8 or 10.
That's only like 10 feet, 8 or 8. I think it varies 8 to 10 feet. That's the skinny one that we're talking about tonight.
Okay, so it's
The
just
other ones,
no more
the
than
other
10
ones
feet.
are, yeah, the other ones are typically 50 feet. North
Right.
Carolina, Maryland, Alaska,
Okay.
et cetera.
So I'm actually, and I only have it in paper. I'm looking at it looks like a wetland delineation that was done back in 2017. And it shows the wetland boundary actually going onto that lot some.
Onto which lot is that, Anne Marie?
I'm sorry, onto
Onto
that paper alley. I can scan this and send
Onto
it
the
out.
paper.
Yeah. Scanning it now, Emery.
What's that?
Are you scanning it now or are you?
I can, hold on, let me
Thank you.
run out and put that.
Would it be possible maybe to have this newly formed group in the sea level rise, look at this situation and see if it's a
Yeah.
best practice? A
We
best
could-
management practice potentially?
We could certainly do that. We could certainly ask Charlie to look at the permeability of this, of what stone is provided. Mr. Von Lindenberg could provide the information as to what was provided and put down. That would be another alternative, and we could defer action on this tonight if we wished. Those are some alternatives, but it is a lot of stone, and it's obviously very much on the city property. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry that we're dealing with this after the fact.
Right.
Just so you're aware that when you're looking at the permeability of a surface like this, you can look at the stone and you can look at the components of the section that's put down on the ground, but it's also a performance-based specification that you test it. And minimum is 2 inches per hour. When we did Bay Avenue and Bayview Avenue, we designed it to 8 inches per hour of permeability. When we laid down the porous, it was more like on the average across all of Bay Avenue, 50 inches per hour.
Right.
So, I mean, that's another thing that you do. You would test it to see how it performs.
Right.
You actually tested in the field, Charlie?
Yes.
Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah, now I've never done it on a stone surface like this, so I'd have to ask the geotechs how they would do that, because you have to, when we did the porous asphalt, it was easy to get a good seal at the bottom when we did our infiltration testing, but I'm sure we can do it.
Was Robin still on here? I think he had mentioned that he might have the survey. I'd be interested in looking at that also.
Okay, well, it sounds as though we're going to need some more information here
Right.
before.
Right.
Do you see my screen?
Yes.
So, and this is the alley we're talking about. Obviously, the lots are oriented differently than what is shown on here.
Oh.
So it looks like it's a 12-foot wide alley. If you look down further to the right, Anne Marie, you see an alley down, keep going over onto the right. You see another
Over here?
12.
Oh, isn't it? I thought that it's closer to Virginia.
No, but I'm saying
Yeah.
that one has,
Yes.
that has a dimension on it.
Oh, right. So it's right. It's 12 feet. Okay. So
So it's a 12 foot.
just kind of the wetland kind of clipping this back and then being more on the north side of the alley. But I don't know what I mean, this was again several years ago, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Mr. Von Lindenberg, would you be willing, can you describe to me or to us, once you brought your materials in, the CR6 and then the stone on top of that, what kind of construction methods did you use? Your trucks obviously brought the stuff in and dumped it, but then you had to spread it. Were you also compacting it?
No, I didn't compact any of it, just used a front end loader, a small front end loader, and spread it. And that was part of the challenge was when the truck dumped it, where the truck dumped it, when it came out of the truck, it spread wide and that ground is really soft right there. So they tried to dump it as far back as they could. And that was how it ultimately ended up spilling over, which is what I tried to remediate and pull back over onto the paper street from the lot.
Okay. So whatever compaction that has occurred is by you using your front end loader and also delivery materials, delivery trucks now coming in since it's been finished.
Well, me trying to get access to my rear garage, correct?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
driving on it. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Right. Driving on it. Right. Okay.
Mr. Von Lindenberg, I don't suppose you've gotten an estimate on what it would cost to remove the stones, have you?
No, I haven't. And I'm just not sure how that would, how that would work to allow us to have continued access to the rear, to that garage.
Well, it looks to me as though we might need more information before we can make a decision on this. I think there are some questions about permeability and future compaction of this stone that's there and the substrate, the CR6. Perhaps this item we should bring back up at the June meeting when we have more information. Charlie, would you have time between now and our June meeting to do some further investigation? And is it reasonable that you can provide us more by then?
Well,
I'm fine with that, Mayor, but I'll tell you the way I'm leaning towards the removal simply because, as you said, it's just encroachments in Lewis is already an issue, and we're going to deal with it again in some small way tonight. So I don't want to be a burden to Mr. Von Lindenberg. I understand that he worked with our city's buildings department to look at his plans, but he had to have known that the area outside of his property didn't belong to him.
That's true.
I'm not for putting it off
Andrew,
either, Ted.
let me add to that real quickly. I'm sorry, Carolyn, go ahead.
No, that's all right. Go ahead, Khalil.
But I was going to add, I mean, Mr. Von Lindenberg has nothing to do with the tortured history we've had here with right-of-ways and encroachments recently. And it's something, it's an issue, like, as you mentioned, it's going to come up later, probably. I really appreciate, by the way, Mr. Von Lindenberg, your letter. It was sent with a good tone and in good faith. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why a lot of us are sitting here trying to figure out, how we can find an equitable solution here. But I have to tell you, that's why I asked earlier about the encroachments, how far it's a huge issue. And at some point, the city's going to have to take a stand and ensure that people are complying with their own rights as well as respecting the city's right of ways. And so I think that's kind of where we're at. I don't think we're probably, as the mayor said, we probably need to defer this for some more information and some more deliberation. But I kind of think that's where I am. I'm with Andrew on this and others, that the encroachment issue has really come to a head. And unfortunately, you've been caught a little bit in the crossfire here.
Sure. Well, I
Yeah,
know there are a
was-
number
I
of
was
other
gonna-
properties that are in similar, I'm terribly sorry, please, Councilwoman, go ahead.
No, I was really gonna second the motion with Khalil, you know, I'm sorry that you got caught in this like this, but I think it's just a matter of that, you're just gonna have to remove it because of the encroachment aspect of it. And I don't think we need to put this off and deal with whether or not it is what kind of rock it is. I think we have to make a decision here.
You second Andrew's motion? Is that what I heard you just?
Hasn't made a motion yet, but
We
we'll-
haven't made a motion yet, Tim.
I'm sorry, I thought he,
No, he
okay,
just,
just a statement.
he just expressed what he was thinking.
yes.
Yeah.
So is there a motion then to move, to have Mr. Von Lindenberg remove this stone?
I'm not ready to make
Damon,
that
you mean-
motion. I'll be honest, and I know there's inefficiencies in kind of holding things off, but in this case,
I don't know if I can make that motion.
I'd like to give a little bit more time to see what potential compromises might be able to work out. If there could be a repurposing of the stones, like what if Mr. Von Lindenberg could maybe come up with a costing of what it
Right.
would look like to remove it.
And
That-
maybe
that-
we can use it somewhere or something. Yeah.
All right, so what I'm hearing is that you want more information, and Mr. Von Lindenberg, it sounds like you're going to need to be part of that equation in terms of
Right.
helping us understand what's there and what the cost would be to remove it. And we need to look at, perhaps this is something that we want to run we want to talk with Sussex County Conservation District about, given the wetland distribution there. Come back, bring this back in June with more information.
We want to work with you. We really do.
And I'm more than happy to support your decision. My goal is just simply to have access to what was planned for, what was approved, granted access to through the use of the paper street. And, sadly that once we tried to use it for access, we're having challenges with vehicles being able to get back there without getting stuck. So I'm looking for a good solution too. I'm happy to
Well,
support.
it's a paper street. Is it a possibility that, and I don't know, Ted, can he buy the part he's on or something? I don't know how that works.
I didn't understand your question, Carolyn.
I said, since it is a paper street that's right next to him, and since it is an issue with him being able to get into his own garage, is it an option for him to buy part of that property or something?
We have entertained the possibility of selling paper streets in the past and have not done it. We'd have to decommission it as a paper street, and we have not taken any action to dispose of paper
Okay.
streets.
I was just trying to,
Captain, there could be an option of a license.
Yeah, we have taken action, but I think the question here becomes one of, what does this do in terms of sea level rise? It's not just a matter of the paper street and the ownership of it or the licensing of it. It's a matter of, this is a permeable surface, or was a permeable surface that is part of the recharge area. And it is part of the storage space for water. And what has been put down will alter that. And water, as we've discussed, or as we know, always seeks its own level. And if it's not going in this lot, where is it going? And are we pushing water off to someone else? So I think this is a real critical decision that we have to evaluate carefully going forward.
right, understood.
Okay, so we will.
Mr. Von Lindenberg, do you have tickets or receipts of what the stone when they?
Cost.
You do have that, so like it would describe what it is.
I'm sure I can find it, or worst case, I can drive up
anything
there
like
and they
that.
have it.
Yeah, anything like that, if you can forward it to Anne Marie. Plus, Mayor, it might take a little effort to do a hand auger boring of the stone to see what's going on exactly. I don't know who's paying for that. I just want to bring that up.
Okay, well, Mr. Von Lindenberg, are you, knowing that you could possibly get the benefit of using it, are you willing to help to underwrite some of the cost of us investigating this?
Listen, I'm in full support of whatever the township needs and needs to pursue. I mean, We just want to be good neighbors. But we would like to be able to have access safely to the, you know, the secure garage that we planned.
Thank you. We do, and as Khalil mentioned, I do appreciate the tone of your letter and the way you approach this. I'm sorry that you find yourself in this position, but it is something that is very important to us and becoming more important as we look to sea level rise issues and things like that. So we'll defer action on this item and come and bring it back.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Von
Thank
Lindenberg.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So then let's go on to item J4, which is presentation and possible action on an ordinance to amend the Lewis Municipal Code, Chapter 183, Vehicles and Traffic, Article 2, Parking. I think we had this before us before. There's been some revisions to it. And Anne-Marie, would you like to talk a little bit about what we've done here?
Yeah, so just for clarity, there were no, the copy that's in the packet is the same version that we discussed last month. There was no real sense of what to do with it. I'm going to share my screen, and I did send this out earlier today. What I've done here is added the language, including but not limited to temporary items such as traffic cones and chairs, as well as permanent items such as landscaping, stones, or fences. So that it's clear that it's any of those things cannot be placed in the right of way.
This is prospectively not.
Right. Correct.
And how is that clear in here that it's prospective? Because, this is in line with my understanding, there was a policy crafted in 2018 that spoke to existing encroachments and how those would be treated versus, in this case, if we're going to treat this prospectively, how does the ordinance, where does it specifically speak to that?
So I would say the ordinance doesn't specifically speak to it, but the policy is still in effect, and we're still going by that policy. So the primary purpose of this is so that right now there's nothing specific in the code that parking enforcement can write a ticket for. So, if you put out cones, they can move them, but there's no citation that can be issued. So, the same thing, you could plant a tree and there's nothing, while it's not your property, and that's clear, there's nothing in the code that specifically says you cannot place items in the right of way to obstruct parking.
I see.
Can we bring up the chief for a second on this then? I just have a question of how he might interpret.
Okay, Chief Spell?
How he might instruct the guys.
You're muted if you could rejoin us.
Yep, I'm on. Go ahead.
So Chief, have you already maybe spoken internally around this idea of, what's existing and how we might deal with those versus like what someone might put in there tomorrow?
Not really. I was looking for guidance more from this ordinance. I'm envisioning it more as the temporary items that people use to block parking, and not so much the permanent obstructions. But permanently, obviously there's issues with that as well. I think that would probably be addressed more by Robin and Steve than it would be the police department. But the temporary items would be more parking enforcement and police related.
That's fair. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, my biggest question is what, if there's any direction on what we do with any material that we were to confiscate.
Chief, in your opinion, does this particular revision to this address your concern in enabling your officers to ticket when it's appropriate?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And it did what we wanted. Okay.
Do you have Chief, in your practice, in your department's practice, if your enforcement officers were to actually see construction underway where it was going to be a permanent installation affecting the right of way, would they typically share that information with the building department, with Robin's group, so that they could be made aware of the activity?
Yes, we would definitely share that. I think it's more in their purview, though, to identify those based on, the work that they do. And I think it's more likely they would probably see it first.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that completely. It's just a matter of eyes, employees' eyes being there observing, that's all.
Yeah.
And sharing the information, that's all.
And just recall that this will be the first season that we have parking enforcement on the side streets on Lewis Beach. So, we are meeting regularly to work our way through the beach parking committee recommendations that were approved by council. So I think that communication will happen when we, as the parking enforcement officers are observing things, we will obviously share them in that context as well among all of the staff.
Right. And that those parking enforcement people on the beach area will be effective with Memorial Day weekend. Is that correct? Is that the kickoff for that?
They're out there now.
It's actually starting on the 1st of May.
Okay, thank you.
There really won't be an issue until, there may be issues now on these beautiful weekends we've been having.
I had one more question. One of the things that was brought up last time too was around folks that have, physical abilities and the need for, say, a handicapped parking. Is that addressed? I mean, how can they come into the city and get a temporary, or how can that work out?
So I think that was addressed because if a resident or property owner puts a request in writing regarding the need for on-street handicap parking, that would be taken up by mayor and council.
We had one of those last month.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Is there a motion to take action on this ordinance?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we approve this ordinance to amend chapter 183, article 2.
Right. Is there a
Is that
second?
sufficient?
That's sufficient. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Khalil. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving then on to, and Chief, I hope this will help you address the concerns. We want to make sure that this information gets out. I noticed that Nick is on the call, Nick Roth from Cape Gazette, and I see that folks from WRDE are on as well. So I'm sure that information will get out. Okay, moving then on to item J5, which is presentation of possible action regarding parcel consolidation for lands of Gottwald and Hardin, located at 618 Kings Highway, Sussex County Tax Map 335 8.15-37.0 and 37.01. This is a consolidation of two lots that were subdivided about 2 years ago when the home that sits on the one lot and the lot was off separately from the house. And these folks who bought the house are now wishing to consolidate the two lots back together. So that's what.
Right.
So,
I'll make a motion. This one should be the easiest one of the night. Let's.
Right.
Oh, no.
we have a second. Does somebody want to second this one?
Absolutely. A second. It is the easiest one.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I have a question though. Wait a minute.
No,
Wait a
come
minute.
on, man.
I have a real quick question.
Okay.
Are the applicants on the call? Can they answer a
The
question?
attorney was.
Do we know?
The attorney was here.
My
attorney's here
question
'cause
is
he's the
this: does
attorney for the
anyone
next one.
know about the stat? Oh, terrific! Do you know there are two very large trees on that parcel? We don't have a tree ordinance. I cannot protect the trees. Do you know what the plan? Will those trees be affected?
I don't know. That probably would have been addressed in their H Park application. And that is actually still available on the city's website if you want to check that out. And I can also get that to you tomorrow.
Wasn't that approved? The H part?
And that was they're
Oh, so-
pending this outcome. Their presentation and their application to H Park was approved.
Okay.
Okay.
And Tim, you're right, we don't have a tree ordinance on private property, let alone. Okay, so,
Right.
Yeah, it's his land.
okay, and it's their trees.
Thanks.
We have,
Yeah.
we started with the vote on this, all in favor?
Right.
I
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving then on to J6, presentation of possible recommendation of mayor and city council regarding a minor subdivision of lands of Christine King located at 119 through 125 Schley Avenue, Sussex County Tax Map 335-8.08-133-00 MS1-121, which is the information on this. This is the commercial building located on Schley Avenue that is being proposed for subdivision into 4 lots. They went to the Board of Adjustment because this lot is just shy of the necessary requirements for subdivision to 4 lots. They got approval for the variance to have 3 standards, 3 5,000 square foot lots and 1 lot that is about 500 feet shy of that. And they Planning Commission, and this was approved by the Planning Commission. And I believe it's subject to the removal of the building. Is that not right, Janelle?
Yes, the building will have to be removed.
I would note that this building has been there for a long time. It was used for commercial storage and offices over a period of time. But this will also, once the building is removed, it will also remove an encroachment into the railroad right-of-way, which is where it impacts the trail. So,
Has anyone talked to the neighbors about?
The neighbors have been noticed per the application, and I have not received any comments from the neighbors.
and it does, on one of its neighbors is the water tower.
Mhm.
Okay.
And
And-
the planning commission voted, what, 6-6 or something? It
6
voted
to 1 with 2 members that were absent.
Thank you. Okay.
A motion to approve this subdivision.
Bill Schaub, the attorney, has his hand up.
Okay, Bill, let's bring him up. Thank you, Janelle. I didn't see that.
That's all right. I think just happened.
Yep.
Promoted him to a panelist, but it didn't change his status, so trying again.
There it is.
Bill, you're muted still. If you could unmute yourself, we'll be happy to hear what you have to say.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I figured I had to say something just because I've been involved in this particular project for so many years. But I know one of the questions was, have the neighbors been spoken to about this? And honestly, at this point in time, my client meets all the criteria of the city of Lewis. So in my humble opinion, we're beyond the point of, honestly, of what do people think about this? We are already there. We meet all the criteria, and it's honestly, it's just the fact that the city of Lewis has just a little bit more of a complicated process for this type of minor subdivision than Sussex County, and Glenn gets tired of me talking to him about this. But if this property were outside town limits, as soon as the variance were granted, this would have been an over-the-counter stamped approval. There would not have been any hearings. It's just the city of Lewis has the process where we come saying we've met all the criteria. Will you please give us your blessing? And honestly, I think that's where we are at this point. And the newest members may not be aware of the history. Actually, most of the members were not on this when it started, because this goes way, way back to when we had the 2-unit condominiums on 6,000 square foot lots. And I have submitted so many pieces of paper over the last 4 or 5 years on this that it would be not all that terribly interesting to read. But at this point, I'm not sure it matters. I think we have all the criteria. And overall, I think even the people who testified at the hearing acknowledge that they think this will be a much better thing for the city of Lewis. So assuming that is the question anymore, I think there's no question it's already been decided by the people on the street, the 125, I think, people that signed petition in favor, those who testified at the hearing, all but I think it turned out one person who was not in favor of this, just in terms of, is it good? Is it bad? Is it beneficial or not? So, but anyway, I just figured I'd throw my 2 cents worth, and we very much hope that the city allows Miss King to finally move on. That building will, if approved, that building will be gone very shortly.
Thank you very much.
And if you don't mind if I just can clarify, because I know there was a question about public comment. Those public comments Mr. Schaub was talking about was the Board of Adjustment application. At neither the Planning Commission or as part of the minor subdivision have I received any comments regarding the application. So I just want to make sure that that's clear for the record, so nobody gets confused when they go back and read the minutes.
Thank you.
And it never hurts to ask the neighbors regardless.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve this subdivision?
I'll make a motion to approve this subdivision.
Thank you, Andrew. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Tim. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bill. I know it's been a long slog, but we're there. Thank you.
We appreciate it, though.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night. So moving then on to item J7, which is presentation and possible action regarding scheduling a public hearing regarding the final subdivision plan for the Lewis Waterfront Preserves located off of New Road, zoned AX Res, Sussex County Tax Map 3-35-8.00-17.00. Anne Marie and I took the liberty of looking at some possible dates to schedule public hearings. Looking at the calendar, we are suggesting that we would like to have this hearing on June 10th. Does that work with everyone's schedule? That would be an evening hearing. We could start at 6 or 6:30.
Let me check. Hold on.
I'm good.
That's Thursday, the 10th, right? Okay. Yeah, I'm good.
At
That works
6
for
or
me.
6:30.
6,
Okay.
what time?
Want to do it? What's your preference? 6?
6.
Okay. Okay, so we need a motion to schedule that public hearing on June 10th.
I make a motion that we schedule the public hearing on June 10th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Andrew. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And again, is that 6:30 or 6 o'clock?
6
6
o'clock.
o'clock.
Okay.
What time?
6
6
o'clock.
Right.
And that will be a Zoom, correct?
Right now, yes.
Yeah.
At some point, we're going to go back to meeting in person, but not yet. Okay,
Yeah, just want to make sure.
absolutely. Okay, then moving on
Thank
to,
you.
thank you. Moving on to item J8, which is presentation of possible action regarding scheduling a public hearing on the amendment to the comprehensive plan, future land use map to amend the same land use classification for parcels 335-4.14-110 and 111 from industrial to residential. If you'll recall, this is the land located where the Lewis Dairy was operational.
Right.
I would suggest that we consider this and J9 together because they're both relating to the same parcel. So Anne Marie and I again looked at possible dates, and we identified that it looked as though there were no conflicting other committee meetings happening on June the 22nd. Here again, we'd like to consider doing that at 6 o'clock in the evening. It's a Tuesday.
No issue for me.
Okay.
Okay.
6.
Yeah, that's
I can
good.
make
I'm
that
good.
Okay, so it's good for everyone. We need a motion to schedule that public hearing for both the item J8 and J9.
Okay.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
Schedule a public hearing on
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then moving on to item J10 is presentation possible action regarding scheduling a public hearing for site plans for Lewis Middle School. This one we'd like to schedule on June 7th.
Hold on.
We're gonna have a busy June, folks.
Why don't we just stay here?
Golly.
That's a Monday evening.
Mm-hmm.
That worked with everyone.
Good.
I apologize. I wasn't paying. Did you say June 7? Is
Yes,
that what you said?
Monday evening, June 7th, 6 o'clock.
That works for
Okay,
me.
6 p.m. Okay.
We lost Andrew for a
You want a
minute.
motion?
I'll need a motion, yes.
Yeah, he's
Andrew might have,
recused from this one.
right, he's not
He's
involved.
recused from this.
Very much. Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Thank you. So we have a
Right.
motion. I have a motion from Tim. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Carolyn. We have a motion. Okay,
I'll
we have a
second.
motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Andrew, you can rejoin us. Thank you very much. Okay, then moving on to item J11, which is presentation of possible action regarding a one-year extension for the conditional use of 406 Market Street, lands of BB. These are resident, we're going to have a series of these. These are former residential properties that are owned by BB that are used for various BB administrative functions. And there has been, I don't think we've ever had any issues with this. Glenn, have you had any issues that you're aware of? I'm not aware of any.
And then I'm aware of, Mayor. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Ted, since we're talking recusal, I'm going to recuse myself from these successive issues here, primarily because I serve on the BB board, a medical foundation board, and that building is at issue, as well as the others that are used for hospital personnel. My father also owns a building next to BB that also, which BB is their prime tenant. So in terms of recusing, just from administrative, do I?
Just block yourself out. That's fine.
Yeah. And camera, and Mike, there you go.
There you go.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion. Do we need a motion? We do need a motion on the 406 Market Street plan to extend.
Mayor,
it.
can we
Hey,
can't
Ted,
do
may I
this
ask
as
you
a
a quick
consent,
question?
like,
Can we do them all together?
yeah, I was gonna ask the same thing, Carolyn. Anyway, if they're all,
Okay. I'm willing to do that unless Glenn objects to us doing all of them.
I don't have any problem with that, Mayor, unless somebody has one that they specifically wanted to discuss.
No.
Okay, so then we're going to consider J11, which is relating to, and they're all the same in terms of use.
12, 13.
406 Market, J12, which relates to 410 Market,
Mhm,
which relates to 440 Market, and
mhm.
14, which relates to 902 Savannah Road, which is the BB Medical Foundation building.
Right.
We need a motion to approve the one-year extension for all of these.
I make a motion that we approve a one-year extension for all of them.
Is
J
there a second?
11, 12, 13, and 14.
Is there a second?
A second, but I do have a question.
Okay,
Go.
And I have a
Why-
question.
Why is it the limit of the 12 month? Why can't we just make these like 5-year leases?
Because
be
we
easier.
changed code to do that. So
Yeah.
Janelle drafted one, like, right at the beginning, she drafted an ordinance to amend it, and
Hmm.
we just need to bring it forward.
Okay, all
Let you
right.
do that, but yes, you're
I
right.
read another,
Okay.
Go ahead, Tim.
I have a question. Or can you give me a brief description what each property is used for? I'm not familiar. I know what the foundation is. I know which building that is, but what are the other ones used for?
Offices.
Office.
The trauma program is in one of them. The quality control program is in another. And then the other one's just at 440 is the offices adjacent to the former convalescent center. So they're all being used as offices of some type.
Mhm.
They all are administrative offices. And at some point,
Okay.
when the hospital completes its expansion in the other locations outside of the city, it's conceivable that some of these may no longer be used.
I see. Okay, thank you for that explanation. I just was not familiar with it. Okay, good.
So we have a motion and a second on this.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Yeah, and
Okay.
yes.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, great. So Khalil, we
Yeah,
need
so-
to bring Khalil back. There he comes.
No.
Oh, that's Cliff. Cliff.
I was a
Good
step
marketing.
ahead. I promoted Cliff.
Do a quick study.
Khalil back. You're very colorful tonight, Cliff.
I can change it if it's too much. It is a little late.
No, it's good. You're good. Khalil, welcome back. All right, so we're finally at item J15, which is presentation and possible action on a recommendation from the Public Art Committee regarding the public art installation in George H.B. Smith Park for the summer of 2021. And Cliff, I know you've been working on this, and your committee had a meeting last Friday. And I think what I'm seeing behind you is what that exhibit's going to look like in part.
Oh, is that it?
That's it.
Well, it's in part, I have about a 45-minute presentation and
That's not long enough.
Funny.
That's
But
nice. Keep it to
I
yourself.
and congratulations to everybody, our new members. This is a interesting phenomenon in that one of our goals a couple of years ago was trying to be recognized as maybe a potential a community that's recognized as art. And we had this opportunity where we were contacted by an artist who was taking this down from a place in Jersey City and said, we understand you have an art program. Would you be interested in having this for the summer? So part of that message about Lewis is getting out there, which is a good thing. And what we have planned, I sent you all, I mean, a lot of background on it. And these are basically, I think there's 12 of these things. They're about 2 feet in diameter. They're 14 feet high. They will be impaled into the ground, sort of very similar to, I mean, if you've been to the website, you've all seen it. I hope you had a chance to go visit the website and read some of the background. But we sent this out to the Parks and Rec people and asked if anybody was really interested, and we had a pretty great response. So I met with the people in George Smith Park, Blockhouse Pond, and we looked at 4 different sites. They came up with the site they thought was the best. We actually are coordinating with the artists that the actual formation of these, whether they're going to be in a line or being in a circle, which was their idea. The artist really liked that idea. She says, I never thought of them that way. So the day that it comes down, they will get it, the exact formulation of this. But it should be viewable from the farmer's market, and it'll be viewable from the lot at BB. I think it's going to be in the corner. There was a map I sent. Can
you screen share?
I can't do it. It's in the back corner of the. Yeah. This is Blockhouse Pond.
It's not gonna come through, Cliff.
Anyway, it's you guys have a copy of it. I sent it to you. Are there any questions? It should go in. It has to go, and I appreciate you getting me on the menu here because we are really pressed for time. She's going to be installing it in 10 days, and it will last until probably in the fall. We may take it down ourselves because she can't get back until October. If the weather turns bad, we will break it down and store it for her. But it should be there through the summer, and it's kind of a light, fun piece. I think a lot of people will smile when they see it, and as opposed to the more reflective piece in the park, which I think has been a really great success in terms of all the people that have been involved in it. And this one is just a whole different reaction time, so an experience. So I think it's going to be great. Any questions?
Yes, is it a painting? Is it, what is it? I can't quite figure out how it's gonna go in the park. I go through the park every day. That's my territory.
Well, I think we sent you a link to the website, which is easier to see it. There are
I don't have a link, but
they are there is a they take these plastic bottles and they are colored,
I see.
and they are then stacked on the poles. You can see them on the right a little bit.
Right.
And they will be there. And those things are sort of like the, you know, sometimes in the car dealerships or the gas stations, they'll have that
Right.
it's like
That
a
thing that
feather.
flies back and forth.
You're right. And so they'll be movable. The guys in the park said, well, could we do these in a circle so you could go inside of it and be immersed in it? And they're like photo op magnets. Everybody wants to get their picture taken in front of it.
Well, do they move back and forth with the wind?
Yeah, they will.
Oh, they do. Okay.
And they're designed to do that. And so there'll be a little bit of a movement to it, sort of like a big flower down there.
Oh.
I think that it's a, and the chance to it's an underutilized part of the park. So it's, you know, in the far corner away from the school. And just before you make the turn to go back over towards BB would be where they'll install it. I mean, that's what they were talking about doing. But the park, you know, Harry was really great at the park, and Harry and Ed really got into this. And so they will be the final people that decide exactly where it goes. And
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
Cliff, how are these, I'll call them poles, but the pieces of art, how are they attached to the ground? Are they on stakes?
They pounded in. That's also in your information sheet. It's there. She will take a sledgehammer and drive a stake pretty deep into the dirt. So we're not going to use. There is a way you could mount them with concrete, but we're not doing that. We don't need to.
Right. And will this area where they're installed, is this in a turf area, you know, where grass grows?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And do we need to be mindful of, is part of the art to let the grass grow tall in that area, or are we still expected to be able to mow around that art?
You know, I kind of let that up to the Parks and Recreation people and the park commissioner down there. I think that they will, it will be easy. I mean, it's a pole in the ground. So, I mean, if you don't mow it, you would have to use I guess, a string thing to get around the bottom if you needed to. But I don't know what the answer is. If you want people walking in and out of it, the way that grass grows down there, they're going to have to mow the grass.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions from the table?
Thank you.
Cliff, I think there's some interesting components here that you didn't mention. I think the kaleidoscopic effect of this multicolored display will be very uplifting for people as they get out and begin to explore. I also like the idea that it is all recyclable material. And obviously we're promoting the idea of recycling. This is a good illustration of one man's trash is another man's treasure, and so turning something very creative, doing something very creative with something that might have ended up in the landfill. So I think this is a very good reinforcement to our efforts to encourage recycling.
Well, it's great. I thank you, Mr. Mayor. You could be on our committee anytime.
I think
What are you trying to say, Cliff?
He said it.
All right, so part of the program now, we're doing these. We're one of if you and I would love to sit with our new council members and bring you up to date if you want to about what our committee's been doing or trying to do. Because it's a little misunderstood in some ways, and I'm always available if you want to have lunch or something. As long as
It sounds great. It
just-
really does.
Yeah.
So,
Charlie wants a lunch.
Charlie, you too? All right. Great. Well,
I think Charlie said he's buying lunch.
oh, I see.
No, I heard the word.
Oh,
food.
right.
Okay. Well, we are going to have the artists here for a couple nights and at least one night, and our committee will put her up. But we plan on having a little a get together, and you will all be receiving an invitation to stop by if you want to and meet the artists. So.
Great. Thank you very much, Cliff. I appreciate your bringing this forward, and I'm glad we were able to figure out a way to get it on the agenda tonight.
I think it's the fastest thing that ever went through the city of Lewis. I mean, except for maybe this sewer problem, but all right.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And we look forward to the installation in a couple of weeks. All right.
Yeah. I know you're all full, but I think it's going to be the night of June 2nd that will be our install date.
Yeah, we'll all be someplace else that night.
Okay. Have a great day.
Well, we'll be there. Okay.
you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, so we need a motion to approve the placement of this sculpture in George H.P. Smith Park.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, even though Cliff doesn't want me on his committee anymore.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's get kicked off.
Take it personal, Andrew. All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yeah.
Are you seconding that, Carolyn?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? What was that, Tim? Are you voting opposed to it, or are you voting in favor of it?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll vote for it.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought I indicated that. I apologize.
If you were any opposed, so, okay. Motion carries.
No.
All right.
I
So
think we've
call
set
it
a
night.
record for the.
Where are we supposed to be on June 2nd?
second, June
Yeah.
2nd is the scat dinner at the
That,
Lewis
Oh,
Yacht.
okay, that's the dinner. Okay,
Yacht
I didn't
Club.
have it on my, I didn't have it on my calendar.
Yeah, Kelly, don't just
Remind
forget
me.
having any free time for the rest of your term.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tim.
There's always a
You had
meeting.
not RSVP to Sue Ann with your
Yeah.
menu choice.
Don't dawdle on that because there is limited seating. And this will be the first meeting of SCAT, which stands for the Sussex County Association of Towns, in case you're thinking of other acronyms. But it will be the first meeting that has been held of this organization since February of last year. So usually the Lewis Yacht Club provides a very heavy draw. So if you're thinking of coming, and I hope all of you will,
I think I did already.
please
You
do
did.
respond to
Thanks.
Sue Ann directly, and you need to specify your menu choice.
Yeah.
All right, so we're now at a point where we need to consider an executive session. Consider we've been at this almost 4 hours, and before that we were at City Hall. I would suggest that we not have an executive session meeting tonight, and that we
Oh, darn.
I know, you're just tortured, aren't you? But I would suggest that Anne Marie and I did take the liberty of putting an executive session on the public hearing meeting that we have scheduled for the 24th, which is
Yeah.
next.
I remember that.
So we'll pick up executive session information that we would have considered tonight a week from tonight.
Mhm.
Okay, so if that's agreeable with all of you, we will consider a motion to adjourn.
What time is that executive session?
It'll immediately follow the public hearing. So it'll come right after the public hearing.
I forgot.
And that public hearing, just to remind you again, is on the microbrewery located on Savannah Road.
I do not have that. Don't know why I don't have that.
Annexation of that property.
All right.
Okay, so we need a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I make a motion.
So moved.
That's asked.
Two hands.
Okay. Well, I want to again welcome Carolyn and Khalil to the council, and I thank everyone for, we normally try to have a very short agenda for the first meeting of new council members, but this clearly was not that. But I do want to thank all of you for your willingness to step up and your work. We've had some difficult things to consider tonight, and we have a lot of work ahead of us, but I think we're in a very good place. So I thank all of you for your efforts and look forward to working together. So all those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
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 All right. Have a good evening. We'll see you tomorrow probably or sometime soon. Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.
Night all.
Tim, go walk your dogs.